Hey, Fool Nelson, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, doing good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Is MB with you, or is he
Yeah.
somewhere else?
Here. Can you hear
Hey, what's going on?
me?
Yeah,
Yeah. Exciting day again.
yeah. I figure we can give another minute or two, but definitely want to probably kick it off with some of your observations from today. So,
Yeah, yeah, you want to let it breathe for a little bit or do we have enough?
I'll give it a couple more seconds. I was trying to share this, and I'm not sure what's going on. It's not letting me share the chat. So,
I think I retweeted it
okay,
from what I can tell. I'm not very good at Twitter, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, I did.
there we go. We got King in here.
Brian, Sarah, boy. Brian, Life, Liberty, Music. What's up, Brian? He was at the trial yesterday. Great guy. He missed out on the fireworks, unfortunately, though.
Oh, don't never leave before the redirect. That's the one thing we learned.
Hey, I'm here. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm gonna prove. Okay. Sweet. Oh yeah, Life Liberty Music's there.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Yeah, man. Happy to have you guys back on the chat. I mean, I thought last night was great just to be able to hear from you guys being inside the courtroom and giving us the commentary that you had last night. I thought was great. I mean, when the transcripts start coming out, it just doesn't capture the same sentiments as actually being inside the courtroom. So it was great to hear you guys talk about yesterday, and I'll hand it over to you if you kind of want to go through what you observed today.
Yeah. So I mean, well, I'm gonna go to NB in a second, but like I guess like we started off with Helston again, and Durham kind of finished him off. I don't remember any um, points that were important on Helston's
No,
last 30 minutes or whatever it was. But
yeah, it was much more tame. There were just a few things, little details that uh, he had on redirect, but it was nothing like it was much more collegial than the day before. So it was just a few things that I'm sure were like important for the record, but weren't really any fireworks. I don't think.
yeah, then they bring it on to I guess Brittany Herzog was the first real witness of the day, and it was pretty interesting. I mean, like just background on her, she was she started being a intelligence analyst in I think 2008. Then she left the FBI in 2009. Then did some grad school and worked for like Nasdaq as um, a global or was a a global ethics expert or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So
But basically, she was brought onto cross. Well, she wasn't on Crossfire Hurricane. She was brought onto a Mueller investigation in July of 2017, and her supervisor was Brian Auden, and she was basically tasked with analyzing and trying to figure out what the hell was going on with the Steele dossier, and and trying to corroborate like any of the sources, blah blah blah, stuff we've heard of before. And her main target, I guess, was Olga Galkina. And so she was working with underneath Brian Auden. So Auden was in the Mueller investigation, and Brittany was working underneath her or him. I think that's his pronoun. And but she also worked with Amy Anderson, who's a supervisory special agent in the Mueller team, and Amy reported to Joe Nelson, who is another supervisory special agent in Mueller. So it was it was basically on this side of Mueller, they're looking into the Steele dossier and trying to corroborate that stuff, and going out and they were tasking Helson basically to interview Danchenko and try to corroborate stuff. But she kept on, Herzog was basically kept on referring to that she was looking into FBI databases regarding Galkina. And eventually she understood that she was in contact with Chuck Dolan and stuff like that, which I think like me and B understood was like, obviously there was a 702 on Galkina, so she was searching that 702 database. That's the intro on Brittany. I don't know if NB wants to go.
Yeah,
I wasn't taking notes really, so
yeah. So all right, a little bit of atmosphere here. So Fool Nelson is using no notes, and he just ran through that. I'm looking at all my notes and just remembering everything as he goes by. It's distressing, and I don't like it that he is this kind of memory. But yeah, so he just went through my notes with no notes.
Anyway, after all the booze I put inside myself today.
True story. Yeah. So yeah, Herzog definitely is a wonk. Like she actually looked younger than I think she was, but she just seemed like, as far as personality, like was a just a hard worker, just like I'm here to do a job and whatever. Yeah, she was a very good witness. Came on, joined the Mueller team, and I think that the main takeaway was this investigation of Dolan got to a point where she was like, okay, Dolan is a major point here because he's got a relationship with Peskov.
Yeah.
So Peskov was Vladimir Putin's
press secretary,
right? Big deal. And Dolan apparently is tight with him. And then Galkina has this relationship with Dolan, and it's some sort of relationship with Dolan. So immediately, professional FBI analysts go, well, that's a connection that we need to run down. That's like actually something really good compared to this Crossfire Hurricane bullshit that we've been, kind of digging through. So here's something that actually might have some merit. So what we find out is that she wanted to make this investigation, put it forward, and the investigation to Dolan was blocked. She wasn't. It wasn't her decision, but she recommended that, and I think we'll find that Amy Anderson was the other agent that is the next witness, and so the two of them were like, "Look, this is an obvious thing that we have to run down." And the Dolan investigation was blocked by the Mueller special counsel, the superiors there.
Yep.
And not only was she so distressed at this, she ended up filing a grievance or some kind of complaint with the inspector general, who would be Horowitz, that this was misconduct, that this is a legitimate avenue of investigation that's been blocked, that she was so upset by it that she filed some sort of complaint with the IG.
Well, I would take it more like this. So, like, she was basically saying that she was blocked, like, for investigating it with Mueller, but she says she opened these case files in three different case files, and she said she opened these case files about Dolan, who that she thought he should be investigated. She said she opened one in like Washington field office and somewhere else in the inspector general. Mm-hmm. So it would go past Mueller basically, because she was like, this guy needs to be investigated. So she opened these case files in these. I don't know how this actually works, but
in the Sentinel system.
Yeah, in the Sentinel system. But so it was going to the inspector general Washington field office. So she was basically like, this needs to go outside of Mueller because it's getting shut down for no reason. Amy Anderson, it wasn't actually her supervisor, but the case agent investigating this, also agree with her. And so Herzog did this. And eventually, she was just basically like, I need to actually file this stuff so it get out there. So this track will be run down, because there was no reason why that should have been shut down. And Dolan's contacts with Peskov and things like that definitely should have been. And his discussion with Galkina and et cetera. And obviously Peskov was supposedly, I mean, Peskov showed up in the dossier all the time. Like, he was all over it. So it was something that definitely should have been investigated by Mueller. And for some reason, nobody wanted to touch it. And the supervisory special agent, Joe Nelson, who was the supervisor of Amy Anderson, and sort of supervising Brittany Herzog, but not really, but he shut it down.
Yeah, and Herzog testified that there was a difference of opinion, and she said that pretty pointedly, not in those words, but between those who wanted to investigate Dolan and those who didn't. And so this was a pretty big deal that created a big issue, big enough that she not only went to, did whatever with the IG, but when she filed these, they specifically said that she testified that she filed these in 3 different case files in the Sentinel system so that it couldn't be buried, so that it couldn't be, set aside or ignored or whatever. And then it was done specifically. She was so passionate, or she was so believing that this was a mistake and that there's something wrong here happening, that she felt like she had to document it in a way that it could have a record.
Yep, that's exactly what she said. And her whole purpose of like MB said, was completely so it could not be buried.
Yeah, and again, this is the Mueller special counsel office time when they're, and I believe that Mueller testified before Congress, if I'm not mistaken, that it was not in his purview to even look at the Steele dossier. And in fact, there was an entire team looking at the Steele dossier.
Yeah, so if anybody heard any of these agents, Amy Anderson, Brittany Herzog, they were probably like, what? Like that was our entire purpose.
Yeah, that's all we were doing.
That's all she said she was doing. And Amy wasn't even there in the beginning of Mueller. She came in Brittany wasn't there at the beginning of Mueller. She came on July 2017, but it was started in June 2017. And there's a couple other analysts that actually came on to Mueller initially, but Brittany came on in July 2017. And immediately there she was looking into the Steele dossier because Brian Naughton brought her on, and it came back. And I think from what I understand, is that Brian Naughton wanted to investigate Dolan further.
We want to see the transcript on that, because I had a different take on it, but I think Fool's probably, I'm 90% sure Fool's right, but I'd like to see that because I don't know where Naughton stood on this. And if we'll see, we'll check the transcript on that one. I don't want to say anything else.
Yeah, it seemed like the Joe Nelson shut it down. Whoever Joe Nelson was reporting to, probably somebody higher up than him, was shutting it down.
Right.
Was she the same witness that testified about about traveling to, I think it was Cyprus, to actually interview Galkina? Was that the same witness?
That's Amy
Anderson. So that's
okay.
The next
Gotcha.
witness. If you want us to move on to there, we can do that.
Yeah, because these two are both, they're sort of they're two sides of the same coin. They're they complement each other very well.
Yeah, one's on the analyst side, and then Amy Anderson's on the operative side, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. You guys can go ahead. I think I do have a question a little bit later as it relates to that interview that they had, but that was it.
On Amy Anderson or Brittany?
Amy Anderson, because as we're talking about Dolan, and of course MB was the first one to break the news today that count as it relates to Dolan was dismissed. One of the questions that I had was, in the midst of this conversation that ultimately was objected and stricken from the record, they asked Galkina whether Dolan was a source for the dossier, and she said yes before they could stop her from speaking or stop her from answering. And that raises the question of how Olga Galkina would know that Dolan was actually a source for the dossier, and why she would say so firmly. So didn't mean to interrupt you guys, but I'll turn it back to you if you want to kind of go through some of those.
No, that's a good intro. And I mean, that's the intro into Amy Anderson. So Herzog left, and then Amy Anderson came up, and she was like, I'm Amy Anderson, blah, blah, blah. How long has she been working in the FBI?
2010.
2010. So but she's not an intel analyst. So she started off in what was it, San Diego or something? Yeah, then she moved to Yeah, she was a special agent, and then moved on to HQ, specializing in Russia, counterintelligence, whatever. And she became I guess, a supervisory special agent in April 2017, Crossfire Hurricane, and she was following this case. And then her whole thing was basically the same thing. Like, she was trying to figure out like the sources of the Steele dossier, which actually I don't really understand, because they keep on like, we need to figure out the sources of the Steele dossier, when Danchenko told all the sources in January 2017. But that's a side point. So basically, moving forward to Mueller, she was brought on Mueller too, and she was basically tasking Helson. She had like a lot of questions for Helson to ask about to Danchenko, because she knew who the primary subsource was, Igor Danchenko, and she was basically tasking Helson, like ask him these questions, blah blah blah. Then I'm not like, I mean, the summer of 2017, how much happened there? Didn't seem like that much.
No, I was all looking at trying to run on these subsources, which again, Durham said never happened, Mueller said never happened, which absolutely did. That was their main task, in fact, was this. They had this team that was trying to run down. And then, as we talked about with Helson yesterday, so they would have to go to Helson, who's not read in on Crossfire Hurricane. Any question they had, they'd have to go to Helson and say, Helson, ask Danchenko, who was the guy we were talking to like 3 months ago or 4 months ago, whatever, and ask him this question. And the follow-ups. And Danchenko was not cooperating. He was just basically ignoring that, not returning them, things that can close out these questions that they had.
Yeah, so basically she was like, there's like a little bit of controversy over this. So she tasked like Helson to ask some questions to Igor about did he know about Dolan's contacts with Dmitry Peskov or whatever? And she had this like report like back then, and she was like, yeah, like Dolan contacts Dmitry Peskov, blah blah blah. That stuff didn't matter. But eventually she was like, all right, we need to go and interview Olga Galkina to figure out, to see if we can corroborate any of this stuff in the dossier. So she was there, and she went over to Cyprus in August 2017. She brought good old Brian Auten and then some other FBI agent in the WFO field office who spoke Russian. They were there for 3 days. And they kind of like beat around the bush for a little bit about like, was Dolan like a source for the Steele dossier? Do you have any contacts with Dolan? Like, that was like basically the point of the trip. It was like sort of about Dolan, because like going back, like they figured out that from the 702 database that Olga and Igor and Chuck were in contact with each other. There's communications back and forth.
Right. Like Peskov was like the biggest fish of all, and then Dolan has the connection to Peskov. So that's like, looking at all this, it seems like that to them is like, this is the only thing worth looking at. This is huge.
Yeah. So like this connection to Peskov, which is like as high up as you can go, sort of. I mean, like that's Putin's mouth. So they're trying to go and see what Olga knew about Dolan. So like at the end, like finally, like she's like, oh yeah, finally on the last day, we were in the same car. I was wearing these freaking sunglasses. And then I finally like directly asked like Olga, like, was Chuck Dolan like a source for the Steele dossier? And she's like, oh, Olga told me to take down my sunglasses so I can look you directly in the eyes. And she said, yes. And then they made out or something like that.
Well, yeah. But immediately the defense jumps up, objection. This is, hearsay or whatever it was. And judge is like, yeah, strike that from the record. So it's not in the record now, but we heard it live. Like, you all heard it now. That's what happened. That's what she said. That I'm sure is what happened. Which is, interesting. Like it just brings up a weird, like, why are these people with Chuck Dolan? There's just a bunch of weird stuff. And I never thought that like he really had much to do with the dossier aside from the stuff that we knew, like the one fucking thing. But I don't know. People are acting very strangely around Chuck Dolan, like they're afraid of him or whatever it is. That like the fact that you'd have to like sit in a car and look at me in the eyes. I'm only gonna tell you this once, and like it's Chuck Dolan. Like we saw the guy. He seemed like he's a guy with a beard. He seemed fine.
It looks like me and fucking MB right now.
Exactly.
With a worse accent. But like at the same time, like they're asking like Amy, like what's like do you have any like hesitancy over anything that Olga was? It's like anytime you brought up Chuck Dolan, she was like sort of like guarded and like
it was the same with Danchenko. It was like he would answer anything, and then you'd get to Chuck Dolan and they'd clam up.
Then finally she was like, all right, rent a car, take off your sunglasses. Yes, Chuck Dolan was the source of the Steele dossier. Then it went to black, like in The Sopranos, and you don't know who died or not after that. But so like Britton Shaw was a person interrogating her at that point. So Amy was basically like, all right, going forward with that. So with that information, they're basically like, all right, we need to go and investigate Chuck Dolan, obviously, because she just revealed that, he was the source in Galkina's eyes, which makes sense. So she was like, all right, there was like some sort of form that Brittany Herzog like filled out, like, all right, we're going to go and do this and investigate Dolan. Amy and Brittany basically wanted to interview Dolan and basically started an investigation. And they started something like a document to open this thing, and they sent it up to the supervisor, who was Joe Nelson. And they sent that up to him, and it like sat around for 3 to 4 weeks. I think she said sat around for 3 to 4 weeks to go and interview him. Then eventually, she asked about it again. It got blocked. It got shut down. And eventually they just deleted that file to investigate him, and it was gone forever. And it was shut down. And that was the last thing about investigating Chuck Dolan.
Yeah, and she had to go into the system and like delete the file because apparently that's the only way to get it off their like to-do list.
Yep. And I mean, obviously, from what we just said, like Galkina telling him that he was a source, and Joe Nelson basically just shutting it all down is freaking ridiculous.
Yeah,
but not ridiculous for Crossfire, Hurricane, and all this stuff standards.
Oh, it's very standard operating procedure. And so I think that the way that Durham got these two witnesses in was he would always, it wasn't him specifically, it was Brittany Shaw doing Anderson, but they would say, like, would you have done your investigation differently if, the things that Igor Danchenko lied about, had been told to you, so that maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe so it was very like artful that he was making this part of the materiality part of this case, where it's, okay, maybe if Igor Danchenko didn't lie to you, that you would have continued investigating. And these were very credible FBI agents, as opposed to some of the other ones we saw in Sussman and here in this case, where it's like, these are scumbags, and they were gonna do whatever they were gonna do no matter what, and no matter what they told them. These were very credible, very honest seeming people that were trying to do a good job, and they were blocked. And it was like, well, maybe if they had the proper information told to them by Igor Danchenko, they could have gotten this done. I don't know if that's true, but it's possible. And I think that's good for the jury to hear that, like, there are honest FBI agents working this case. So maybe there are bad actors that weren't listening to Danchenko, didn't care what he did, but these two particular individuals actually cared, and they were trying to do a good job, trying to, do their best.
Yeah, and they were like, I mean, you could tell like they really wanted to pursue that, and it was blocked for reasons that we can't understand. And there was like a little bit of a controversy, like on the defense, like on the cross, that the defense tried to basically posture Amy Anderson as like lying, basically. And it's not like a big deal of the case, but she sort of fought it back, and she was like, "Well, I didn't mean to lie, whatever. I just didn't remember it." But
yeah, it was the defense made it look like a big deal, but I didn't feel like it was more of it was even a misstatement. I thought it was just sort of like the way the defense put it was making her look like she had said something that was not true. And I don't even think at the end of the day it mattered. Like the transcript will show it. It definitely didn't make her, like, even the defense was like, I don't think you're lying. I just think that maybe you overstated this or said it wrong or whatever. And like, okay, fine. But for the defense, maybe it was, fine, but it helped them maybe a little bit, but I didn't think it mattered. I mean, she was a very credible witness.
And then going on from there, basically, Ryan James came up. He was on the Durham team, and he was basically just verifying like the call logs and all the calls that Danchenko received and what Millions call logs were doing, and it was very boring. And you could imagine what that went like, but. We can go into that, but it wasn't interesting or relevant.
Yeah, that was just boilerplate.
Yeah.
Well, that was good stuff. Any indications how much more the prosecution has left?
They're done.
They're done.
They're done. Okay.
Yeah. So we were. Here's what happened.
Yeah.
Funny story. So we went to get lunch, and then that turned into a couple of beers, and. So
we went to get beers, and it turned into some lunch.
Right, turned into some lunch. So we walked back to the courthouse, and everyone was running out because the cross on the they didn't do a cross on the I don't forget the
Ryan James.
Ryan James. They didn't because it was just he's just reading records. So there was nothing there, and as soon as we walked up, everyone's running out. Just the judge had thrown out the first count, which was the Dolan lie that Igor had said that he had never talked to Dolan about anything in the dossier, and apparently the judge was super skeptical about that from the beginning. If you go back to the motion to dismiss, that was already in there, and the judge basically said, "All right. Prosecution, you better have something more than this because I am very skeptical about it. When someone says they talk to someone, they better have talked to them, not necessarily, that doesn't include email, or, that's, talk is talk." And there's apparently there's some case law that backed that up. And so as soon as the prosecution was done and the defense, the judge said, okay, you didn't improve on that, so I'm dismissing the first count. And so the defense rested, I guess. So everything's going to closing arguments on Monday.
Yeah. So me and MB were like getting barbecue and like drinking some beers, and we're like, all right, like let's just go see what's going back at the courtroom. We're walking back. Then everybody started. We got there. Like I literally handed my phone to MB, so I'm like I can go run up to the courtroom because you can't bring a phone in there. Then all of a sudden everybody started like sprinting out, like. Jerry Dunleavy, it's like one just like coming out and I'm like, is it over? And he just goes like, first count just got tossed. And then I'm like, he basically just like sprinted away. He's like, wait, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I'm like, okay, first count just got tossed. And MB just like tweeted it out. First count got tossed.
Yeah. So we were the only devices.
Yeah.
We were near the courthouse.
Yeah.
So we broke it.
Yeah. We broke that story easy. Then Toria came out and she typed up her stuff, but after that, I mean, just for how it went, we went outside, Spunt was doing some hits. We were talking to Regina. Regina was there, and then we went over to the Westin where Igor and everybody was staying. Obviously, me and MD just grabbed some beers and we're just just looking outside, and then Dunleavy was standing out there. I'm like, and MD was like, hey, we should go see if we can get a beer. So I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll go do it. I'm like, I went down. I'm like, hey, Jerry, you need a beer? And he's like, looking at me like what? I'm like, you need a beer or anything? And he's just like, what? And I'm like, yo, dude, I'm Fool Nelson. I'm get in here, and he's like, holy crap. Like, he's like, yeah, he's like, all right, I'm canceling my freaking ride. And he's like, came and like, then came and we had like a couple beers and just freaking hashed out the entire thing. Yeah, it was awesome.
It's cool.
And Jerry's on top of things for sure.
Yeah, follow Jerry. Jerry Dunleavy he knows as much about this as anybody. He's on top of it.
And it's like he's on a mission, like, which I didn't realize what his mission was until we talked to him. But like, it was great.
That's awesome, guys. I don't even have anything to ask you or anything. So King or if anybody else wants to jump in, go ahead.
I picked up on Toria's commentary, and I've got to hand it to the Durham team and Britton Shaw for that questions and answer about Dolan being the source. The lead up to it with the sunglasses, take your sunglasses off, look me in the eye, and she said, yes, he's a source. That was brilliant. I mean, the testimony was totally inadmissible. But they got it in, and the jury heard it, and the lead up to it was so powerful, they'll never forget it. The judge says, strike the answer. Don't, everything after the sunglass part, strike from the record. Well, the jury heard it. And that's the kind of thing in the lawyer craft that you can't, that's the sort of thing you can't unring the bell. They heard it. And the sunglass story is embedded in their minds until the day that they die. So unfortunately, they lost that count. It got tossed. But what a win for a lawyer.
No, yeah. Like, I mean, like, that happened. The only problem is, like, I didn't hear it very well. I know MB heard it. I'm like, what did she just say? She just said, like, yes, that he was the source. And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I didn't hear it very good. I'm like, hoping the jury heard it. Because, like, that whole entire thing is definitely true. She told her, like, bring down the sunglasses. And I'm like, I couldn't exactly hear, like, what she said. But, like, MB did. So I'm sure everybody else did.
Yeah. And I think it was even, like, King, I'm sure you'd agree, it's even more powerful that there's an objection and the judge jumps in, and that perks the jury up, and they're like, I just heard something important.
Yeah.
And I remember it. I'm not, you're told to discount it, but it's actually more powerful because obviously there was a controversy, so you remember that a little bit better.
But it's got a hook. And the hook is the in the car, the sunglass story, looked me in the eye. That they attached the hook to the question and answer, and it's that type of maneuver that wins trials.
Amy Anderson was a very good witness, and that part of it was very dramatic. Like, it was, I mean, not in a bad way, but in a, wow, that's like spy stuff. Like, that's from a movie. It was really cool.
Yeah, and Amy, like, fought off, like, the defense was sort of trying to, like, accuse her of lying under oath and stuff like that, and she fought it off pretty good. So she was, like, a really good witness, and so was Brittany Herzog.
Yeah, and so just real quick overview that we were talking about was, all right, these are two FBI employees that Durham picked, and they both, all right, so both of them had something that they brought to bear, that not just on this case, but on the Mueller special counsel investigation. And that, I think, was kind of the point today. Yeah. If you want to buy into the, Durham is planting some seeds here and putting some stuff in the record about the problems that all the things we know about. And these two just absolutely made huge explosions on the Mueller special counsel investigation, saying that, hey, we had absolutely rock solid reasons to go after Dolan and investigate him, and whether or not there's anything there, we don't know. But that doesn't matter. It's that somebody stopped that. Somebody put a big red stop sign on investigating Chuck Dolan, who was a Democratic, longtime Democratic Parachek, and they stopped the investigation of that for no, they didn't have any reason why they weren't told anything why they stopped that investigation, whether or not there's anything there. They stopped it, and bad enough that Herzog filed some sort of grievance about it, whatever, and clearly Amy Anderson was also very unhappy about it. That was, I think, the point today. Aside the case stuff, but then this stuff with the Mueller special counsel, that was huge, and that was, I mean, you'd have to be blind not to see that that's really a big part of what Durham was putting on the record. It was very. I think our point was they could have picked two other agents that maybe didn't have this experience. They could have picked a different analyst. There were plenty of analysts working on this, and there were probably other FBI special agents they could have picked. They picked two that both had the same issue, that they were trying to get Dolan opened up, and that was rejected, and they were both unhappy about it. Those were the two that Durham picked. So I think it's really hard to get around the fact that he picked them for a reason.
Yeah, and like going forward with that, like when we were talking to Jerry, like his like whole entire basically like goal was like once he saw like the Mueller report, he's like, "Where's the Steele dossier stuff?" And then once like Mueller testified that like, "Oh, it wasn't in my purview," he was like, "That's complete bullshit. It wasn't in his purview. Like that stuff was happening." And when you're in this trial, it's like freaking Amy Anderson and Brittany Herzog, that's all they were doing. That was their whole entire goal, was trying to corroborate the Steele dossier. And they put it out there, and it's like, what the hell was Mueller saying? And Jerry was like, this was like my magnum opus. Like, this is what I was trying to like get through the entire time. It's like, obviously the Steele dossier was the only place that basically existed where collusion happened. Like, that was the only place that said like, oh, Trump was colluding with Russia, which is true, which is Report 95. And that was like, Report 95 was like one of the main topics of the entire event that we were witnessing. But it was great for Jerry because he was like, yes, finally. But like Mueller is like, I don't understand how he's going to get away with that, because it was clear perjury. Like, I mean, obviously he has Biden brain, but it was clear perjury, I would imagine.
Yeah, what you guys are describing that happened today, it has a parallel in the Sussman case. This case, the Danchenko case, dealt with the dossier. The Sussman case dealt with the Alpha Bank fabricated hoax. And you recall in that case, you had a couple of analysts out of the Chicago office who looked at it, looked at the evidence and the theory that somehow Trump was communicating with this bank in Russia, that it didn't make sense, didn't hang together. And they wanted to talk to the author of the white paper who concocted all this. And they ran that up the chain, and people in headquarters told them, no, you can't talk to the guy who brought this to us. Cut him off. Literally the same kind of roadblock was put in their way in their investigation as was put in the way here on the dossier.
And as I understand it, opening an investigation on someone is not a high hurdle, like for the FBI. And especially when you have this kind of, we're talking counterintelligence, we're talking espionage, and it's just opening an investigation. And the fact that they wouldn't open on Dolan at all, who has all kinds of red flags. And I'm not saying he did anything wrong, or at the end of the day it mattered, but they didn't know that then. That's the point, is they didn't know what he knew, who he was, doing business with, who he was, what he was up to. That to me is shocking because opening an investigation is, we saw it in Crossfire Hurricane.
Like, oh, I want to open up like 25 investigations.
Right.
Dole is not one of them.
But Dolan's not one of them. And look at the Papadopoulos, the Crossfire Hurricane. What did it take to open up Crossfire Hurricane? It took, one, diplomat
like
coming in.
It's like an inference to through the telephone conversation.
It's a low bar because you're asking the question, right? So that was shocking. And I think that's definitely why Herzog and Anderson were like, wow, why would you not let us even open?
Well, going back to the Sussman case, they didn't even have to open an investigation to talk to a witness. The witness who put the whole package of data together. They wanted to talk to Jaffe or people working under him. And they were not allowed to because it led back to the Clintons.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dolan was like basically protected throughout this for reasons unknown. And maybe we'll never know it.
He led back to the Clintons or to Russia, one of the two.
Yeah.
Well, that's where there's always been the discrepancy, and that's why I guess I was kind of hoping we'd hear a little bit more about Dolan, even because in the indictment, Durham went out of his way to say that Dolan was sort of a cooperating witness, and he had said that the Clinton campaign knew nothing about this information he was given to Danchenko. But then we get the testimony today where it's like, well, Olga Galkina, she knew that he was a source for the dossier. And that sounds like more than, he was just, trying to help out Igor Danchenko, and he flipped on Fox News and just kind of gave that to Igor Danchenko. Like how insignificant is that? And lining that up against what Olga Galkina said, like that doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah, when you go back to like the dossier and you go like, what is contributed to Olga Galkina? And a lot of it is like whatever's from Ivanov, whatever's from Peskov, the Cohen stuff. A lot of the stuff like in the Peskov like range and Ivanov range is like, oh yeah, that could definitely be from Dolan. But it's like, where did the Cohen stuff come from? Like, is that from Dolan? Probably not. But I mean, maybe, but like, that's like when you look at like what's actually attributed to Galkina, and if she's saying actually the source was Dolan, like that opens up a lot of doors. And that Mueller and those guys didn't want to touch it at all is completely ridiculous.
I know nobody probably paid any attention to it, but the testimony of today about the telephone logs.
Yeah, we were there.
Did you notice that in the last week of July, Danchenko got 2 or 3 unknown calls lasting less than a minute from who knows who.
Yep.
But the only calls he got really of substance that were identifiable during that time period came from Dolan.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like Dolan, Galkina, and they like went into like this like big spiel about like these unavailable calls that were like under a minute. They couldn't like trace it back to like a carrier back in 2016, so they couldn't like say specifically what these calls were, like the unavailable ones. But like the first one was like July 29th after Danchenko left New York, so like it's not even possible to be like to make it be any sense. It would be million, but like they're like yeah, it's like less than 1 minute. So like according to Igor, like his call with Sergey Millian was like 10 to 15 minutes or whatever. Which actually like brings me back to like a thought about like Helson's testimony, which they didn't bring up. Is this like worth like sort of like commenting about? Like apparently, well, Helson was always like Igor was very truthful with me, and the only time what Igor was very consistent with was there was only one call that I had with Millian through every every single like interview I had with him from March to September, that there's one call with Sergey, like this anonymous call, and all of a sudden in October he was like, there might have been like a couple of calls with Sergey.
Yeah, that was
and there's like some weird inconsistency.
Yeah, it went to a couple of calls.
Yeah. That's what like it started off with today, which I forgot about. It's like, okay, like Helson thought he was like truthful, but about this Sergey call, and then that came in today, and it was like, what? Like, why would you say there's a couple of calls? And you guys can actually track down any of them. Like, why did he switch his story in October? And it was kind of weird.
Yeah. I mean, Helson was like just absolutely lambasted to begin with. I thought his credibility was shot because he didn't want to hear anything that didn't agree with what he assumed about Danchenko, and that was one of them. Was just like, oh well, he changed his story from and you didn't ask any questions, you didn't think anything of it, you didn't make any moves, whatever. It was just like, okay, well that's fine.
Yeah, they didn't do anything.
But they did show that he got 2 calls from Dolan that week.
Yeah,
2 separate calls.
Yes. Yeah,
and they were not long, but they weren't less than a minute either. They were,
like 6 minutes, 4 minutes, or whatever.
Right.
Yep. So I mean, like the whole thing about him getting a call from Sergey, like there's like a couple unavailable calls or whatever, but those weren't convincing. There was no way it was actually Sergey or anybody else.
No.
Yeah, the first long call he had was in early August with Steele.
Yeah.
Assuming it was. He said it was.
There's some calls from like Galkina, Dolan. Those are the only names we really heard.
Yeah, and one UK call for about 40 minutes in August.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say for just real quick with the Ryan James testimony, the one thing that I think was important, if anybody on that jury has some kind of tech experience, so they did bring up the issue with the apps and WhatsApp, Wicker, whatever it is, and there's like, they kind of ran through it real quick, like, well, there's these apps. And so James' take was, well, here's the deal. You have to have, both parties have to have most of these apps. So if you got WhatsApp, they have to have WhatsApp. So you have to know what each party has, blah, 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 blah. And they kind of tried to use that to, well, it's very unlikely that it was an app because both parties would have had that app. And to me, if I was on that jury, I'd be like, well, that is some bullshit. Like, first of all, WhatsApp is not any of those would not be unpopular or weird. If you knew the other guy used it, you'd just be like, fine, I'll go get it. It would take 2 minutes. But beyond that, there are plenty of, phone call apps that you can use to be anonymous on one end and just call the other line on the other. I mean, those exist and they're not a problem. He sort of just ignored their existence. So if anybody knew about those, you'd go, this guy's full of shit. He's wrong. This could have been, this absolutely could have been someone that disguised their phone number through whatever and called on an app that wouldn't show up on the phone logs. And that's reasonable doubt. And honestly, for me, it's like, that's fucking reasonable doubt. Like Sergey does use these apps all the time. I'm sorry, Sergey. Sorry, Sergey. Yeah. It's been a long day. Danchenko uses these apps all the time. It's totally believable that someone could have called him on something like that. It could have happened. It would not be surprising to me, and it wouldn't take a tech head. It wouldn't take a fucking nerd to figure it out. It's not a big deal. And the fact, I think, God bless John Durham. I would tell him this to his face, but I think that this is the losing issue, that the apps are are unlikely or unusual. I think it's to me, it's a reasonable doubt.
The argument is that, yeah, it could have been an app, but people who have WhatsApp, for example, you set it up. You send a text, you send a email ahead of time saying, do you have WhatsApp? I'm going to call you on WhatsApp at such and such a time. And that didn't happen, according to the testimony.
Well, right. It could have happened, but regardless, it didn't have to be WhatsApp. It could have been somebody else on Text Now or 50 other things that are disguising their own phone number. Well, I guess that would have shown up, but that's fair enough.
They've been like, oh, Igor is Russian. He probably used Telegram. So I'm going to use Telegram apps to contact Igor Danchenko.
Right. There were plenty of apps that it could have been that just knowing, like, it's not a big deal to know that Igor Danchenko likely would have had that app.
Yeah.
Especially if someone told him. Maybe Olga told someone, hey, he's got WhatsApp. Call him on WhatsApp.
Check it out.
I'm just telling you what Durham's argument is going to be.
Right, that's what he's arguing. Absolutely.
It could win the case. I'm not going to predict. Technically, it's possible to do it without, but his argument is going to be, well, if you're going to use an app, you set it up ahead of time, and that didn't happen because we've got the record.
Right, well, but the burden of proof is the problem here, and like I think there are some definitely younger people in that jury that I think would be like, yeah, that's it wouldn't be a big deal for.
Yeah, and my sources are saying that, like, I'm not sure if they're really too worried about losing a couple of those.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the points that would be important to make, those apps were a lot less popular in 2016. I mean, today, yeah, everybody's got something like that on their phone, but 2016, yes, there were definitely some of those apps, but they weren't nearly as popular as they are today. And
that might be true, but that never came out at trial. So I don't. And maybe it'll come out and close, but nobody mentioned that. Nobody reminded the jury that was the case.
And nobody reminded the jury that there are all these ways, these methods to use, where you really don't need to set it up ahead of time. You can just do it. You just know somebody's on such and such an app. So, you can use LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that, and you don't need to say you're calling in advance, so it's not going to show up on your phone log. That was not in evidence.
It's even less than that. If you have WhatsApp installed and it looks at your contact list, if you select somebody that you want to call just through your phone dialer, and WhatsApp knows that the other party also has WhatsApp installed, it'll give you the option to call using WhatsApp without even, without you having to even intervene.
Right.
Sort of. So if both parties have WhatsApp, it'll give you that option when you call.
Yep.
As I said, the jury didn't hear any of that. I'm surprised at the defense for not putting that on.
I get the defense feels comfortable. I don't. It may, I don't know what's going to go up in closing or what they can bring up, but I just got the sense that they're like, this is, it's not going to be a problem.
One other question I had, guys. So there was a tweet somebody documented today that Danchenko at one point kind of demanded more money, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that, especially if you have like a time frame that Danchenko apparently walked in and was a little bit unusual, I guess, and he demanded more money for being a confidential human source.
From what I remember was, I think it was like spring of 2017, and Helson was basically like, or somebody asked him, was like, have you ever heard, when do you see any like strange behavior from Danchenko at all? And it was like, I think it was like spring of 2017, around that time frame, not March, probably maybe the April or May or whatever. And he came in and he was basically like demanding like, hey, I need more money to take care of my kids. I have all these kids, blah, blah, blah. And it was basically that his wife or whoever was demanding more money out of him.
His wife and his lawyer. I don't know if they were the same person at that time, but whatever it was, and they were I think it was he's putting his life in danger, and he should be getting more money for this. And then Helson was just like, I thought it was totally, he was like, okay, so he said it was totally reasonable. He's like, yeah, that I understand that, it makes sense, but also it was like, oh, good, now I know what Danchenko looks like when he's upset. I know his tell.
Yeah, now he knows his tell.
And I'm like, you know his tell because his wife yelled at him?
Wait, maybe that's the only time he's actually telling the truth, Helson.
It could be, yeah. Then he was really convinced, like, oh, I got this guy. I know everything about him. I know his tell. Like, he could be put on a show right now. You are the worst.
To be outed by my own wife. You need to give me more money, assholes. I'm the most. I am reshaping the entire way the FBI perceives intelligence operations. You understand me? That's what he told me in the elevator.
This is a hate crime. I'm just saying it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, King, this is Mitch Goat. Going back to your thing about the WhatsApp and what's going on, fellas? I've been in construction for 30 years, building commercial buildings, and my goal is to get to the penthouse, get the roof on, get it closed in. I don't care about the foundation. Well, not the foundation, but I don't care about the consumables I'm going to use going up there as far as nails and saw blades, whatnot. They're just tools. And if I lose them, it's okay. Paralleling that to building a case where Durham's goal is to get to the penthouse or the roof, not asking about the WhatsApp and looking at it through that lens of not going after certain things, but bird dogging certain other things. Just trying to get a sip of hope in here that he doesn't care about certain things. He really doesn't care about Danchenko. He doesn't care about Sussman. These are just tools and consumables to get to the penthouse, from a legal perspective.
I like that theory.
Yeah, only that doesn't work because he's blown his credibility and he's going to be shut down when Danchenko gets acquitted. So that's just not going to fly. Plus, he didn't really release that much through these maneuvers. The only way he salvages this, Durham, is by explaining, and you guys can help me out here whether he has explained it already or whether that's going to happen on Monday. He has to explain. Forget about all this WhatsApp and all this bullshit. And, I totally agree with King that it's a huge omission to not say that in 2016, very few people were using this stuff. But, leave that aside. Has he explained why Danchenko lied about the phone call? That's central to all this. Has he explained that?
Well, going back to the bigger picture here, is it even important to get Danchenko or more important to get certain things on record which are happening?
I would say, has he?
He can't explain. He hasn't explained it because he can't actually prove it.
I think it's weird. It's almost an Easter egg hunt. It's like for people, and I guess if you're skeptical, you'd be like, you see what you want to see. But for people that are looking at it, I think he is laying a trail, and not just a trail, but he's putting big flags on areas like the Helson day that was about the current counterintelligence division of the FBI. Like, we have to look there. There is problems there today. And then today's testimony was, let's look at the Mueller special counsel. There are huge problems there. That is something that needs to go be looked at. And do we all wish we had more? Yes, but at least there are targets where it's a target-rich environment in both those areas that I think we wow, yeah, absolutely, that needs to be looked at. So maybe that's just, that's some serious glass half full kind of shit, but it's what we have.
But at the same time, I feel like they know exactly what we are thinking, and that there is complete corruption and whatever the hell is happening there. And I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe Durham gets shut down, but I think whatever after that, I think people are going to come forward.
Yeah, but in the first instance, you got this trial. I mean, that's what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And you got to try and salvage it. And you guys were there. I've seen it from a distance. I've read the transcripts. It's a complete catastrophe the way it's gone. It was predictable. People predicted it. I predicted it. Steve McIntyre predicted it. Other people predicted it. Okay, fine. Doesn't matter. It's Friday night. You got to salvage it. You got to do something. So on Monday morning, the only way to salvage this, well, if there's any hope at all, is for Durham to explain why the hell did Danchenko lie about the phone call. If he doesn't explain why the guy lied, there's no point. There's no hope, because people will say, "Oh, WhatsApp, oh, I don't know, reasonable doubt, and it's done." You got to explain
Hans, you're
why.
exactly right.
Yeah, but like you can't explain why he lied if you can't even say he did lie.
Yeah, you could. No, he can
Of
explain
course,
it.
you can explain why he lied. You can say that the million was central to the dossier. It's all about million. Everything is about million. The conspiracy, the WikiLeaks, the P-tape, it's all million. If there is no million, there is no dossier. So he had to lie. And you got to explain that. You got to tell the jury that.
You know how you explain it? You explain it because he said Steele was putting so much pressure on him that he didn't even contradict Steele when Steele said he met him in 3 different cities. I mean, not to put those two together I don't understand why Durham wouldn't emphasize that. He said Steele was putting so much pressure on me that I was so tired of him, I just let that contradiction go. Like, I would hammer that, because if he was not even going to rebuttal Steele, he obviously would lie about that. I don't know.
Well,
Durham,
look,
do it.
there's rules of evidence, right? Steele is not a witness in this trial, and they couldn't make, no matter what John Durham did, he could not make him appear at this trial. It wasn't going to happen. So Durham has limitations that he has to live with, and he has objectives that he's trying to get to. And we don't know what's going on inside. We don't have any inside information or any insight. All we have is what we can look at and say, what do the tea leaves tell us? And I think, to me, and everyone has their own opinion, to me, I think John Durham is doing what he can with what he has and trying to put out there the information he has. He's still got a report coming out, and hopefully it all pulls together at some point. Definitely, this trial is not the culmination of what he's trying to do. It can't be. It won't be. So if you're looking for salvation at the end of this trial on Monday, you're definitely, it's going to be a lost cause. But I still hold out a lot of hope that this is just, he's doing the best he can with this, but there's information that's going to come out, and maybe we won't be all satisfied with the results, but hopefully, God bless.
You still got to try and salvage this. Like, you're 28-3 behind in the fourth quarter. Okay, you can just bring in your backup quarterback and just kind of go, whatever, I've lost already, or you can give it a go. If he gives it a go, he's got to explain why Danchenko lied about the phone call. And he can do that without problems with rules of evidence, because this is just general knowledge kind of stuff. You're just kind of painting the picture of why he might have lied, and you explain it. And there's been enough evidence introduced anyway to make that possible, because the jury have heard about the dossier and this and that, and about Million, and they've heard about what Million was supposed to have contributed to the dossier and whatever. So there's no problem with Durham saying on Monday, hey guys, if you were wondering why he lied, this is why he lied, and he needs to do that. He should have done that already, but maybe he saved it for Monday. But he really needs to do that.
I don't think he's actually brought enough evidence to even prove that he even did lie. You to go to the next step. Why? I don't think he has enough evidence to say that he did.
He needs to tell a story, like the defense did with the, Danchenko's the best.
I feel like the defense would hop back and be like, where's that? If you're going to say why he lied, there's no evidence that he did lie. That's a big problem there. You're talking about call logs and stuff like that. And there's gaps in about the messaging app. He could be like, oh yeah, I just got a call from a messaging app. You haven't proved that didn't happen. So, and Helson keeps on saying oh yeah, I believe that Igor had this call basically.
Oh, he really could. Yeah. So here's the point. This case is not going to be won. He's going to lose this case, and they're going to lose this. They're going to lose this case because the FBI, just like in Sussman, fucked up. They didn't do a good job.
Yeah.
They didn't pin down Danchenko on his statements such that he can't wiggle out of them. And that's their job. They're trained to do it that way. And
they
When
did
you
a
move,
terrible job.
when you move to why he lied, you have to go say like, wait, there's no evidence that he did lie.
Yeah, it's so they're going to lose this case. I assume they know they're going to lose this case, and they're dealing with it because that's that they don't have a choice. So, what is their long-term strategy? What is the point of the special counsel's office that they're looking down the road, going, look, we have to get this information out because we don't trust the attorney general to let our report get out. So we need to get stuff into evidence that other people can hopefully track down. And if that's where we're at, it's not John Durham's fault. That's the situation that we're in. I'm sorry. I mean,
well, it's his fault for bringing unwinnable cases. Then he just should have not brought any cases and focused on the other stuff. But
true.
Fool. No, I got a question for Fool here.
You could file a report that gets buried. I mean, he could have done nothing. If he just showed up with no indictments and just a report, he probably would have shut down a year ago. They would have said, hey, he's got no indictments. Let's wrap this thing up. Write your report, 6 months ago, a year ago. And that would have been that. And they would have buried the report. And we wouldn't have known any of these details. We would have known about the CI issues going on with Danchenko being the star, the all-star of the CI today, right now, that he apparently is the altar that built the CI around it. We wouldn't know any of this. And they could have. So I would say that there is value in what he's done.
Well, he could have charged Comey and lost the case and brought out all the same info, and that would have been a lot more interesting. But Fool, you mentioned yesterday that you thought Helson was honest, but you mentioned today that he was not honest. Now I read yesterday's transcript, and I wasn't there.
I feel like
but to me, the guy is completely dishonest. To me, the guy was sent in there in order to basically go to bat for Danchenko, to get Danchenko out of there. And in fact, I think that was the plan all along, that if something happened to Danchenko, they had this guy to come in, white knight, and kind of save the day by, basically blowing up Durham's case. So did I hear that right earlier, that you don't think he was honest today?
I don't think I said he was dishonest. I feel like, no, what I said was that, like, he believes what he was saying.
Yeah,
100%.
He believes his own bullshit.
Yeah. If you're in there, you'd be like, yes, he believes this is what he's saying, which I can't tell if that's dishonesty or stupidity or cognitive dissonance, but there was no tells like he was being dishonest or anything. Which difference between do I think he was telling the truth? I couldn't tell, but in my mind, from what he was doing, that's what he believed.
It's just too convenient that they bring in this total outsider in January of 2017. Like, hey, this guy Helson, with the troubled background, could you come and please, be the handler for this troublesome little, guy here? Nothing works out here,
They handed him off. Like they were trying to get rid of him, in my opinion, and he took him because he didn't know the problem that he just had taken on, and he didn't want to know the problem, and it was a hot potato, and he took the hot potato. He didn't pass it along.
Like when you watch him, like he's like, he's like the antithesis of Struck. Struck would be like this, like combative.
Yeah,
Helson wasn't. Like he was thinking, he's just like, I probably should have done that. Like he looked maybe like he was fucking stupid or something. Like maybe but he took this toy that he had no idea what the fuck it was, and he was like, holy shit, this is like my golden goose. And then he held on to it, and he's like, definitely not going to fucking test it. And then he tried to be combative with the human source section or whatever. Trying to one up her or whatever, and be like, I know more about counterintelligence than you.
Just like Steele did. I mean, Steele was like, oh no, this all stuff is. I think it's good. I think it's fine. I'm not going to tell you who my source is. And it's like it's too late before you realize this guy just completely fucking was
like he got like kind of fucking railroaded because he didn't get the full picture. He should have fucking asked for the full picture of like the 3-day interviews and all this other stuff, but he thought it was like fucking great, and he got buried by it, and who knows? To me, like it looks like Helson got played more than anything. It wasn't like in on it, he got played.
That reminds me, as Hans was speaking a moment ago, we found that this morning where apparently Helson told Danchenko that he was free to go ahead and destroy evidence. Like, he'd go wipe his phones. And then it sounds like, then it's like 6 months later, they're like, yeah, we're trying to find out who his subsources were. And it's like, wait a minute, you told the guy to go wipe his phone. Like, how are you going to do this? It's ridiculous.
Right.
And
Well, let me play shipwreck crew for a second here. So he's a spy.
No, please don't.
No. He's working for the FBI, and he's going to spy on his compatriots in Russia. And they're saying, look, don't leave any breadcrumbs. They're going to get you murdered. So that doesn't bother me. Look, don't be stupid. Don't get yourself doxxed and you get murdered by Putin. I can understand that.
I can't. Like, there's no way.
I cannot. Hello. Before the FBI tells the guy who just disavowed the Steele dossier to wipe all his devices, they're going to ask for copies. I mean,
that's
there are a bunch of buffoons there. I mean, Strzok is one of the dumbest persons I've ever come across in, at least on TV. But oh my God, you cannot be that dumb. No, that was on purpose.
Well, no, that's a different question. That's give me, like, just as he was told, hey, you should get backups of this. You should get this guy's cell phone. You should get all this stuff, which he didn't do. And then delete all your shit. Then scrub all your stuff, which you should.
Yeah.
That's two different questions. And he did not do that. And I 100% agree. He didn't do it because he didn't want the answers. He didn't want to.
Like, here's the thing. Like, it's not like it's like one, like I'm agreeing with you. Like, Helson did bad shit, but it wasn't like a conspiracy between these two things. It was like between like Helson and Auten, because they didn't like each other. Like, clearly, I think like Helson was like, this guy's a fucking idiot, but he's like, oh, I have this fucking thing. But then he started doing fucking stupid shit with his like prize, and it was ridiculous.
Yeah, but I thought the whole like Peskov angle was really annoying too, because Dolan was working for like Disney to get Disney cable over in Russia. And he said he only talked to Peskov like twice a year, and then they're like, Cyprus. Danchenko's setting up like I don't know how many people went to Cyprus with to find out to talk to Galkina. Like Amy went, and I'm like they're all like acting like spies.
Well,
that's just a travel boondoggle. Trust me.
That's kind of like where my question is. I was unaware of this until basically reading some of these transcripts in the trial. But the fact that independently Dolan knows Galkina, was there any sort of pressure to find out if Dolan was actually Galkina's source? So that basically everything that was going to Danchenko was coming through Dolan?
Well, I mean, that was like the whole like Amy Anderson in the car with the sunglasses down situation when she said, yes, that Dolan was a source for the dossier, and then it was all fucking scrubbed.
And he was very important. What was that accent? I thought he sounded like he was Mark Twain. Remember that? It was very important. He had a weird affect. Dolan.
Oh, yeah. No, he has a Boston accent just like you, Regina.
No, I don't say important like I'm from.
Like, it's not blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
right.
Boston accent for sure.
Yeah, but just a little bit of spice. Dylan had an accent, but it was only when he was reading.
Yeah.
Like when he was talking just off the cuff, no accent. When he was reading something, Boston accent.
Yeah.
So, put that in the file.
Anybody else want to talk? Or questions or anything?
I have something. There is an alternate universe that Durham could have traveled in. Instead of going down this route, the one he took, he could have focused on the FBI, DOJ conspiracy and using as the linchpin the cornerstone of it, the meeting in March with the talking points memo, where the FBI basically lied to the DOJ, and then they repeated that lie to the Congress and to the court about the provenance of the quote Crown reporting. This is after Danchenko told them it was all bullshit, and they buried that part and made up a fiction about how solid Steele was and his network was and his Russian-based source was. And that's what they spun from then on. Now, if Durham wanted to, he could have attacked that conspiracy. It was a conspiracy. There was evidence of crimes, and he didn't go down that route. I'm not sure why. Maybe he was stopped. We'll have to see.
What are the what about the possibility that Durham, the sole reason that he brought these charges against Danchenko was to get FBI agents on the record under oath so he can use it as currency with Garland to maybe take the leash off?
That's what a grand jury's for. You can do that with a grand jury. You don't have to go lose a couple of false statement charges.
Well, the only big difference is that the grand jury, though, is secret, whereas this is out in public.
No, but it's not secret to take to Garland. It's not
right,
secret. It's not secret to use to indict.
But politically, though, there's a huge difference between those two things.
This is not if he's in doing a criminal investigation, it shouldn't be political.
It shouldn't be.
It should be based on the facts and the evidence.
We know Garland is political, so Garland can ignore grand jury stuff because the public doesn't know about it.
Garland can't keep a lid on that forever. If he's got a strong case and he can, Congress ultimately will get involved and stuff will come out, leaks will happen, whistleblowers will come forward. He didn't go down that route unless he tried to and got stopped, and that we don't know about.
So this is
I agree with King there. I mean, you whatever theories there are kind of percolating around or whatever, you don't go and lose two high profile cases on purpose to get stuff out. First of all, there wasn't much stuff that came out. It might seem like that in the moment, but look at the bigger scheme of things here. You just don't go and do that. That just doesn't happen. So I don't think this is part of some 3D chess or whatever. I just think he messed that up. And just another thought here. Think of Michael Flynn. These two guys, Sussman and Danchenko, who clearly lied, they're going to get off now. Michael Flynn, who didn't lie about anything, because we know on the transcript, the Strzok's transcript, the Strzok and Pienka, he talked about expulsions. He never talked about sanctions. He was charged with sanctions. But of course, it never went to court because his idiotic lawyers, he's not a lawyer. He didn't understand these things. He told him to plead. And, it was all totally messed up. Imagine Michael Flynn, never mind DC juries or whatever. Imagine Michael Flynn going to court and Mueller trying to prove that he lied about sanctions when he didn't talk about sanctions in the transcript. I mean, what an absolute farce. And the poor guy went down, And these two people who did do bad things, they're going to go free. So, there's no way that any of this was done on purpose. I'm going to lose on purpose or whatever. No, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they definitely didn't want to lose on purpose, but
This is what they had.
yeah,
So
motivation.
But
So
think of like Manafort, like with Manafort. I mean, when you listen to Caputo talk about the pressure that Mueller did on him, like your wife has cancer, if you go to jail, you might not see her again. I mean, they could have strong-armed Danchenko with a lot of you might be deported, and he might have pled guilty thinking, oh my God, like all those Papadopoulos did, and but they hired him.
This is my first time jumping in. I've lurked on a few of these conversations, and I want to say up front that all the people in this corner have just been fascinating to listen to, and I really love all of you guys. I'm firmly in Hans's camp and with King that Durham, for some reason, inexplicable to me, decided instead of going after the forest to go after the trees. And when you do that, you have a problem. You have to work bottom up. You have to work from, quote unquote, the evidence. But the issue here is that to prove the guilt of anything, you have this prism of means, motive, and opportunity. And that's quite hard to show when you're working bottom up from the trees with folks like Danchenko or Dolan or all these like peripheral pawns on the chessboard. What is sort of unique about a case that you might bring against, say, the FBI or the DOJ is that they have infinite means and infinite opportunity. All you really need to show is motive. And in the case of a guy like Comey, I mean, my God, like how hard could that be to prove? He's like an open book there. And that's what baffles me about this whole process where we're focused on, well, what's the evidence that he lied? Well, for crying out loud, let's start from the top down. What's the motive for not letting them investigate Dolan? What's the motive for XYZ? If you focus on motive, the interpretive framework for any evidence becomes a whole lot easier. And that's what's kind of, I watch this stuff from afar. I'm not a legal person. I'm astounded that the simplicity of the truth staring us in the face that can't be uttered in the media because, we don't have the evidence, blah, blah, blah. None of that makes any sense to me, because to me, if you start with motive, all the other stuff becomes clear. And when you understand that a division like the DOJ or the FBI and the IC, they have potentially infinite means and infinite opportunity, the motive is really the essential component. And nobody's asking, well, what motive would Comey have to tell Trump what he did? What motive would so-and-so have? It's so easy to unpack that. And then from there, you can find all kinds of evidence. But when you're trying to we got these scraps over here and over there, down there, and these lower levels, you're never going to piece it together. It's almost like he was given an impossible task to try to work from the bottom up to prove that the top did something. If you just look at the motive, let's start with that. It all becomes clearer. I mean, that's how they charge Trump, right? That's how they make the case against Trump on the January 6th. Oh, he had this motive. He wanted to overturn the election. And so everything through that interpretive framework, every little whatever they throw out there makes sense to people who, whatever. I'm very frustrated watching this. I have an extremely dark opinion now of the state of our country and where it's going. And until we can get back to fundamental things, I don't know how we fix this. And working bottom up, losing these like leaf kind of tree, like forest cases like Danchenko and Sussman, these are in no way brilliant moves. He's either forced to work from the trees up, or just not allowed to look at the forest. And you can, and that's kind of where I'm at. I apologize if I ran a little bit there.
No, you're good. Thanks for coming on, Publius. I'm saying that right, Publius? Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah, from when there's this whole thing, there's this separate inspection division investigation in the FBI, and I'm like, when the hell did this start? Because anytime there's an FBI agent mentioned, they're like, I'm investigated by this other freaking thing. So I don't know who the hell created that, but it might have been after Biden came in and Garland came up, and he's like, well, we can just shove all this other FBI investigation into the inspections division. You can just do whatever you're doing right now, because Kleinsmith obviously was prosecuted before the election in 2020, but it seems like there is nobody being investigated in the FBI by Durham at all. And it seems like after Kleinsmith, all of it got shifted to the inspections division. And we haven't heard anything about it since. And Ryan James, one of the aspects about him, he came in he was based out of first of all Connecticut, and then he went to Mississippi, but then like in February 2021, he was in an inspections division, and I thought he was saying he was working on like something like this sort of case, and then he got moved to Durham in March or May, one of the M months in 2020. I think May. I feel like it's like 4 months later or something like that. In May 2021, and he's been working with Durham since. So like I feel like there is something going on there. Like there's some of this stuff got shifted out of Durham. But I'm like we talked about last night, it's like, why is Durham even here if he's not prosecuting freaking the FBI, DOJ?
Yeah. So why is he a special counsel, which Garland can direct, and not an independent counsel? Like that, I think, is the big question. He's forced to work the way Garland will let him
independent
work.
counsel doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah,
the
because
independent
they
counsel
changed the law
statute
on that.
lapsed. It was not renewed.
Yeah.
Let me weigh in here for a second because I want to read something to everybody so that everybody understands there is a written basis for some of this stuff that has happened. Okay, this is under a Department of Justice regulation. Okay, so it's not a statute. It's something that the Department of Justice has passed upon itself regarding special counsels. It's section 600.7, conduct and accountability. And it says, the special counsel shall not be subject to the day-to-day supervision of any official of the department. However, the Attorney General may request that the special counsel provide an explanation for any investigative or prosecutorial step, and may, after review, conclude that the action is so inappropriate or unwarranted under department practices that it should not be pursued. In conducting that review, the Attorney General will give great weight to the views of the special counsel. If the Attorney General concludes that a proposed action by the special counsel should not be pursued, the Attorney General shall notify Congress as specified in section 600.9A3. Now, you go to 600.9A3, and that says the Attorney General will notify the chairman and ranking minority member of the judiciary committees of each House of Congress with an explanation for each of the following. Upon conclusion of the special counsel's investigation, so when he's done, including to the extent consistent with applicable law, a description and explanation of instances, if any, in which the Attorney General concluded that a proposed action by the special counsel was so inappropriate or unwarranted under established department practices that it should not be pursued. So, yes, the DOJ regulations give Garland the authority to stop Durham from going in certain directions.
Okay.
Garland has to report that. He has to report what he did and why he did to Congress, but not until the special counsel's investigation is complete. So the answers to some of these questions will likely be forthcoming, but not for a while.
So can someone then explain to me Barr's behavior with respect to Mueller's report?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think, and with what Chip has said as well, Publius's point earlier was exactly right, motivation. And then you get to tactics, and this has nothing to do with Garland. We're talking about last week or, first day of the Sussman trial in May. Why on earth did Durham not go in there and lay out the motive? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have a case of two lies, and there is a motive. Danchenko had a motive, and you go as to the motive. Motive number one, he lied about Dolan because Dolan is a Clinton associate. We're in January of 2017. Even Devin Nunes didn't find out about the Clinton connection until October of 2017, so he was trying to hide that. Number two, motive, Million. Million was the supposed source of all these dossier lies. Of course, no one knew about that at the time. So he had to shut it down. He had to somehow make it go away. So he lied about Million. So you go to motive, he didn't do that. That's tactical. That's got nothing to do with Garland or anything else. It's just, that's just a mistake. That's just a very bad mistake.
That's worse than a mistake. You can't make that kind of mistake on accident.
Hold on a second. All right.
Is that legal to do? I don't even know.
Well, this isn't a DC jury, but it's, the Northern District of Virginia. this jury is not going to listen to the shit that we talk about all the time. At least half of them are, I would think, are just like, are probably Democratic voters, Clinton voters, because the country's 50-50, and it's probably more than that. It's a fairly Democratic district. If you go in shouting hellfire about, this happened to Trump, that happened to Trump, you're just setting yourself up to lose immediately.
That isn't what Hans said.
It might not be, but that is probably how the jury's going to take it. If you turn this into a political case.
Okay, so hold on just a second. Here's the problem with what Hans said. Hans, who are your witnesses for that? Who are you going to call to the stand to lay out evidence on those points? Those are polemics. Okay, there's no witness you can call to say what Danchenko's motive was. And opening statement is about what your evidence will show. And what Durham's problem here was, he didn't have witnesses he needed, like Millian, who wouldn't come back, like Steele, who wouldn't come back.
All due respect, but Danchenko's motives, Dolan's motives, all these trees in the forest motives, those are far murkier and hard to show and whatever than the folks in the forest who control the trees. And that would be folks like Comey, and that would be folks like McCabe, and that would be guys like Strzok.
And
these guys so overreached and so overarching.
Garland blocked, I think. But that's where Garland blocked him. Garland, I think, was not. I think that a lot of this was, to some degree, fatigue. Garland saying, "Look, this has been going on for 7 years. How much longer are we going to let it go on?" Yeah.
Well, that's the running out the clock approach, because Garland's on Team Clinton and company. The problem here is entirely political, and that's why all of our rules of evidence, all of our bottom-up prove motive, blah blah blah, all of that seems impotent to stop a DOJ and an FBI that's determined to have political outcomes. And there's no way you can ever prove anything, because evidence doesn't have a prism through which you can look at it.
And that's why the solution for this problem is actually in Congress. But you have to have Congress people with a backbone.
Okay, I'll slit my throat now.
Do it.
Yeah, me too. Look, there was a witness, at least one immediate witness, who was actually there, Dolan, who was actually quite good for Durham. Of course, he would have said, if Durham had asked him, why do you think that, Danchenko, you've spent a lot of time with him, why would he have said that about you? Or why would he have not shared the fact that you guys had these emails? And, he would have said, well, probably because I'm a Clinton guy.
No. The defense lawyer is going to say objection calls for speculation.
Yeah,
the judge is going to sustain it.
Speculative.
And the judge is going to sustain it. He's not a witness as to what's in Danchenko's mind.
Yeah, I'm sure, those guys traveled to Moscow twice. They spent a lot of time together. There's a lot of stuff that Dolan could have attested to.
What really irks me about these conversations, and these are all great, guys. I'm not knocking any of you. This is all very helpful. I love Ship's clarification of the statute, all of that. The thing is, the framework through which Trump has been convicted in the minds of half the population now, and they're all ready to see him go off to the Huskow with no evidence, is because these people play the top-down motive, opportunity, blah blah blah. They make that case continually, daily in the media, and they've got entire families of people convicted already of things far worse than what they did, like the January 6th people. And this is all a matter of conviction. You talk to the normal person on the street that's been watching the news, they're absolutely convinced that these people all committed insurrections, Trump's this, Trump's that. And we can't prove that Danchenko lied. What the fuck? Pardon my French, but on some level, we have to stop looking at the trees and pay attention to the forest and work a top-down argument. Now, some of that's political. I get that. But these people in the political in the supposedly non-political branches have to have crossed huge
Well, you want to bring these
attempt to articulate what they did.
In Washington, D.C., you actually need to bring evidence and freaking nail it down, or you're not going to get a case. Especially with this one.
The January 6th committee has no evidence, and they are far more persuasive, and they've got half the country convinced of stuff that's nonsense. And yet we can't prove a simple thing with Danchenko and whatever because we're working the system.
That's irrelevant to the point I just made. If you want to actually convict Igor Danchenko, you have to be airtight.
I don't
which
care
wasn't.
about Igor Danchenko. I care about Comey. I care about McCabe. I care about Strzok.
You're complaining about the Igor Danchenko. This is what we're talking about.
You can win. Okay, so win Congress, and then you've won a political victory, and then bring Igor Danchenko up, whoever you want to, and you can run a political show trial. Do you want to be as bad as the other side? I guess that's my question. We all agree that they've done egregious things, that they've done terrible things. They did it to Trump, then they did to Flynn, they did a bunch of stuff. Do we want to be as bad as them? Ask yourselves that.
Yeah, not in terms of targeting innocent people, but certainly in terms of tactics and strategy and modus operandi. No doubt about it.
So
Durham never used the media. He should have created a massive media. At least on the right side of the media, he could have easily done that. After we identified him, he could have. That was in July of 2020. He indicted him in November of 2021. That's a year and a half. He had a lot of time to build a narrative, and he didn't do that because he's not that kind of guy. I understand that he doesn't do lawfare. But unfortunately, we're living in a period of lawfare. You got to do lawfare.
That's fine.
But I don't think it would work on this jury though. Like you're saying, if you can do lawfare, it's not going to work on this jury. Like once they're just having an out to get Igor out, it's over.
Yeah, no. But if you have 18 months worth of look at Flynn, what they did to him for how many months? Yeah. You have that against Danchenko. He's just going to plead guilty like Papadopoulos and the rest of them.
You're looking at a different jury. If you're trying to do it to this jury, it's completely different.
So forget about jury. Lawfare has nothing to do with jury. That's why all these Trump people pleaded.
You have to lawfare. You can grind them down, but what's your motive? You want to get the conviction, or do you want to get the story out?
You commit a crime and if you're operating in Washington D.C. and someone decides that you've committed a crime, then you're going in front of a D.C. jury. And you're probably going to be behind the eight ball if you're in the conservative, if you're Trump or anyone related to him. So you will immediately have a problem. And that is a structural problem. There's a political problem. It's a problem that our country has created by putting all this power, putting the headquarters of the FBI in Washington, D.C., where these meetings are going to happen.
All this federal government.
These are things we've built into this. So if that needs to be changed, the change is probably going to be either get rid of the FBI or farm out these things and put it in Tulsa. Because if you have a meeting in Tulsa, Oklahoma, your jury pool is going to be very different. And I know these are big picture things, but this has happened for a long time. We're not going to solve it with a couple of court cases. This is huge, structural problems that are the rot is obvious to us now.
From a trial lawyer standpoint, taking a step back, it's not easy to prove a single defendant, single count, or single handful of counts of false statements in situations like this, because your ability to bring in evidence that might prove motive, might prove a conspiracy, is more limited. What we're looking at with Sussman and Danchenko, I think this has the smell of a wide-ranging conspiracy. They're talking to each other. They're planning outs. They're planning defenses. They're building firewalls between this person and that person to protect people down the line. And the only way to bust that up is to get cooperating witnesses to tell the real story. And you can only do that by going after the conspiracy and, giving immunity if you have to. Durham didn't do that.
Well, I think it's a good point. I mean, he has gotten a couple witnesses immunized. I don't know how helpful they've actually been, but I find it really interesting. I don't think anybody's mentioned Fusion GPS, and I think a couple of years ago, when all of us were when Danchenko was initially identified, I didn't think we'd be sitting here talking about a couple false statement cases about whether Chuck Dolan, who we'd never heard of, was involved in the dossier. I mean, I think all of us were thinking if there was going to be charges, it would be a conspiracy charge. It would be, Danchenko and Steele and Fusion GPS working in a conspiracy to, perpetrate a fraud upon, the FBI. And I think, as King kind of points out, I mean, it feels more like a conspiracy, and a lot of us have kind of observed this over the last few weeks, where if it was a conspiracy, Durham would have a much easier time getting in a lot of the evidence that a lot of us would like to see. Certainly, as it relates to Danchenko, one of the big questions that I have actually relates to like the January interview and the immunity agreement, and I want to know, what his lawyer was doing and what David Loftman was saying. That's really where my curiosity lies, and I don't know. I don't know if he's building a case or if he's walking away. I think Hans was spot on earlier. I mean, this is not like a planned out endeavor, and you have to wonder if Durham ever writes a book whether he's going to share what his mindset was. Was he thinking that he was going to continue to develop information and maybe do a superseding indictment, or what was he really planning to do with these indictments? Because he wasn't just planning to go out there and lose a couple statements, have the left wing media rip them to shreds, and turn off 60% of the country to his report that is apparently pending. So hopefully we get a little more clarity. Obviously, after the election, about whether or not he's done, or what the status of everything is.
A Republican GOP Judiciary Committee in the House or the Senate can bring him before the House or Senate and have him answer questions, just like they did with Mueller. And but what you need politicians with some spine who want to go down that road. And remains to be seen if Jim Jordan is that guy, or somebody else in the House is that guy, or somebody in the Senate is that guy. It's probably not Lindsey Graham, unfortunately. So, I mean, Durham didn't spend 3 years doing this to bring 2 cases with false statement counts. Something that so there's only one of two I can think of alternatives. Either he came to the conclusion that there weren't any other prosecutable cases, or somebody stopped him. They as we've talked about, they redirected his inquiry into the FBI personnel to alternative investigative and prosecutorial avenues. Not necessary to have a special counsel to do those. Special counsel's mandate is typically limited to areas where there's an existing conflict of interest that the Department of Justice can't pursue, but the Department of Justice prosecutes FBI agents all the time. So, Durham's the one with the answers.
And we saw some of that.
I just don't think he spent 3 years to bring a 1-count false statement against Sussman and a 5-count false statement against Danchenko.
Well, we saw some of that in the New York Times article a couple weeks ago that was basically projecting that Durham was done. Buried within that article was actually a paragraph that said that Garland had asked for a report by May, which just blew my mind. And I tweeted a lot about it because it really blew my mind, because if you think about the timeline, I mean, he wasn't even close to being done. He was still fighting Fusion GPS privilege over emails that we hope he's gotten by this point. And of course, we saw a year's worth of filings that just ripped Rodney Joffe to shreds. So it seems like he was certainly planning out more. And if Garland stepped in and stopped him or interfered, I think he has a duty, especially with the stakes. He knows far more than any of us about how bad this was. And if anybody was interfering or slowing him down, he had a responsibility to come out and issue a press release. It didn't have to be detailed, but it would have said, I am in the middle of my work. I feel it's very important to complete without interference. And, subsequent to that, I've submitted a budget, expect to be fully funded, something to that effect. Like, he doesn't have to go out and say, like, hey, I'm being interfered with, but he could have dropped some hints in a press release, and, a lot of people would jump to his side. So I don't want to hear from Durham, here's my report, and oh, by the way, I was going to do all these I was going to follow all these investigative leads, but Garland stopped me. But I'm done now. I'm walking away. Like, that would be the worst case scenario, because then you have 60% of the country, the Democrats who didn't care to begin with, who aren't going to care, and then you have the 40% left over that care a lot and really want to find out what this is, and we're just going to be all upset. And I know there's a scenario where nobody's going to be happy, but I hope it's not that one. Like, that would be the worst case scenario.
Go back to ground zero, Barr's appointment of Durham as special counsel. If you read that document, it goes on and on and on that the purpose is to investigate the inside the government workers who appear to have violated all kinds of norms and maybe criminal laws in Russiagate, focusing specifically on the FBI.
and Mueller's office.
And so that's his charge. He's brought one minor case against Kleinsmith that pled out in a way that gave Kleinsmith a slap on the hand. But when was that? 2 years ago. What's he been doing on his main charge since then? And if he's been stopped at looking at inside the government actors in all of this, and he's put on evidence that they acted, they stopped investigations, they would not let agents talk to the author of the Alpha Bank white paper. He's put on evidence that agents were not allowed to investigate Dolan as a possible source of the Steele dossier. So they were impaired in their investigation and in their job as law enforcement officers or intelligence officers. Or intelligence investigators. Somebody stopped them. There's evidence afoot to permit or to justify Durham going forward with his charge. And if he's not allowed to do that, it seems to me he has to resign.
I thought so too. Because it doesn't seem like he's actually going after the FBI at all. And especially after like the Mar-a-Lago raid, I'm like, oh, this is a perfect time for Durham to resign, maybe. But who the fuck?
I don't know if you guys heard, but late this evening, Devin Nunes actually made a statement that he felt that something was holding something or someone was holding Durham back. I found that interesting that it was coming from Devin Nunes. So I don't know if anybody's heard that yet, but it kind of aligns with what you're talking about, and that maybe he is being held back. So something to consider.
I can see that.
I think that's 100% likely.
You could very well see Durham resign next week. And he'll let the staff finish up. He'll let the staff finish up writing the report. And if when this case is over, if there's nothing else left, he could turn over the office to whoever the senior staffer remaining is to write the report. He could resign, and he could, be eligible to be immediately called before Congress as soon as, January, when there's a changeover in control of the House at least, and maybe the Senate as well. If he's been blocked and
Chip, I think you cut out there.
Yeah. I'll finish for Ship. I think if he has been blocked, and has no or little chance of unblocking himself, he has a duty to resign. He has to go back
Yep.
to Watergate. I mean, that happened back then. And he has the ability to resign very vocally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does
So you guys
anybody
think
know
that,
that?
like after Danchenko's over, like he can just be like, "All right, I'm done." He doesn't want to ruin the case right now.
Is it possible? Let's say he does resign, and let's say there's a change in the House and Senate. GOP takes over. They want to proceed. That they could request a new special counsel, and Durham could be named again.
It's up to Garland. The Attorney General names the special counsel.
Okay.
Congress's role is to conduct oversight.
Okay.
And if they think that whatever Garland has done, if he's done it, to hamstring Durham, the only remedy Congress has is impeachment.
Okay. Yeah, and that's my question is that if they get the House and Senate, and again, I'm speculating, I'm thinking, we're in this for the long game here, is that if there is a shift in control of the House and Senate, they vote to impeach both President VP, they could impeach Garland and put somebody in. I'm just saying that there's maybe a long game here because they've run into roadblocks, that this is maybe plan B, plan C, I don't know, but just speculating. So food for thought.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us are operating under the perception that recent public reporting around Durham is accurate and that he is done. And we're just trying to speculate a little bit about what exactly that means.
Right.
JH, I see you've had your hand up for a while. What's up, man?
Well, I guess my question is a little bit off from this, but for the guys and Regina who were in the courtroom, was there ever a moment when you got a visible reaction from the jury? Because I'm sitting here thinking, if I don't go on Twitter, I've never heard of this loose corner, and I believe everything I've been told. In this trial in particular, this completely demolished the dossier. And I'm wondering, if I was just an average person sitting on that jury, my jaw would be dropping because this is so much different than what I had been told, for the last 6 years, literally. So, I mean, was there ever a moment where you saw the jury just...
No, I feel like the average juryman was like, what is actually going on here and why is there so much detail and what is going on past this and et cetera, in my opinion.
Yeah, one moment that comes to mind in particular was they were questioning Dolan, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but he said, well, yeah, I sort of embellished that a little bit. And it was like a fundamental accusation that was made in the dossier.
Well, I mean, like, that was like natural. I feel like that was like human nature. He's just like, yeah, like I sent that email to Igor because I was just trying to like help him out a little bit. Like I just saw something on Fox News and I just like basically sent an email lying to him. And like I'm like, yeah, like I can see any human doing that. And the jury probably wasn't like, oh, that's shocking. And it didn't really have any really effect on the first count really at all. Like, so what? That Dolan lied to him. Doesn't have any effect on what Igor was lying about or whatever. Because like it's basically him saying, like, Igor was supposed to be saying like that he didn't use like Dolan as a source or whatever. He didn't talk to him about the dossier or whatever. But it's in the weeds. But like Dolan basically just admitting like, yeah, I lied to him. Fuck him.
That was the issue about Lewandowski being behind Manafort getting fired.
Right. And actually, I think it was Dolan claimed to Danchenko that he met Lewandowski in a bar for drinks, and that meeting never happened.
No, that's not what he said. He said he talked to a female GOP representative who heard from Lewandowski that Manafort is going to be fired or whatever. But in the actuality, he just watched a Fox News hit piece and then he basically lied to Igor.
There was nothing about meeting a Trump campaign person for a drink.
There was, but it's all made up.
Right, that's what I'm saying though. That was part of what he embellished.
Yeah, but no, it wasn't like a Trump person. It was like a GOP activist or whatever.
I thought it was Lewandowski. Is that not?
No,
not remembering right?
Not to jump in, but I'm just going through my notes, and there was the jury was fairly attentive, some more than others, but the one time that I made a note that the jury kind of sat up, and this was early in the trial, which I think they had a little bit more attention, was Iggy had an email that I think he sent to Millian just blindly, and it was something about representing a company in Switzerland that was a lie that he just made up, and the prosecution was basically saying, yeah, so there was no company he was representing. This was all bullshit. He's just like overinflating his credentials, and he's lying in this email. And at that point, I just noticed that, and again, this was early, and the jury was attentive to that, and people kind of sat up and were like, oh, so this guy's full of shit. That was my interpretation of what happened. That was
his email to like Millian, like, I'm with the Swiss bank or whatever.
Yeah, other than that, I mean, it's been, it's not been a long trial, but it's been like intense days, like long days, and I have no idea what this jury's thinking. They're probably just like, what the fuck? This is, the things are going on above our heads that don't seem to be really related to what we're doing, and they're right. So
yeah, like I was saying, like it's like very like in the weeds at some points, and it's not even about like the lies that like Igor basically tried to say. Like they're just like introducing a lot of facts that probably don't matter to the case, but like to us, it's like, all right, nice.
Yeah, there's definitely a few jurors I've noticed that are sort of like not even taking notes and just like, what is happening? They just have a demeanor of like, I don't know why. I don't get this.
I'm even like watching the bailiff, and I'm like, I don't think he knows what's freaking going on at all either. But he's like I'm like watching his expressions because I like where I'm sitting. Like usually it's just like I can't really see the jury. Like MB was like a little bit inside me, but I'm like watching the bailiff, and he's just like, I don't know what the hell's going on with this trial. Like. Me and MB like might be the only couple of people who, like really understand what's actually going on. I'm sure the jury has no idea what the hell's going on when they go on these like tangents on the side and like why the hell is this even relevant?
Hey, talking about Dolan picking up just reading stuff on Fox News or whatever, passing it along as dossier stuff. It might be worth recalling. I mean, it's kind of a funny point, really, but sad as well. All of this supposedly started because of Papadopoulos watching Fox News on May 9th. When Andrew Napolitano said, the Russians have Hillary emails and are thinking of dropping them before the election. That's exactly what he said. And the day after, Papadopoulos meets Alexander Downer and says, the Russians have information and they might drop it before the election. Exactly the same thing. And that's how it all kind of, well, we know there's a backstory to that, but I mean, that's the official excuse for all of this.
Yep, cable news. That's like, I mean, yeah, that's exactly what Dolan was even talking about. But I don't know. I can't even imagine what was he actually watching. I have no idea. But
the way I look at that is the FBI was going to come up with an excuse that wasn't related to what they're actually focusing on, no matter what. And George Papadopoulos with Alexander Downer was the opportunity. So it was like the fact that George Papadopoulos was the predicate for the entire thing, and then they immediately pivoted, to Carter Page and the Trump campaign. It was just an excuse that tried to obscure what they were actually focused on.
I agree with that.
Hey, quick question for Ship. Thanks for making me speaker. Undead, appreciate it. Great corner session. If Garland were to have, quote, shut down Durham, what does that look like? How is it communicated? And what does he control he controls the scope of the investigation? Does he change it throughout the investigation? And if he does that happen in a phone call and email through another member of the I don't get it. But if you could explain how that would happen, that would be great, because I'm seeing that whole Devin Nunes thing start to take kind of like some speed around the internet, saying he thinks that Durham was stopped. And I'm with who I think Ryan or Undead said that. And I don't accept that. He would have to explain it better. And I would love to hear your take, Ship. Thank you. I'll turn my mic off.
Well, I think, that sort of determination and communication, is called out in the regulation. It's, both sides, Durham is not going to be happy when he's told he can't do something that he has expressed a desire to do. He's going to document in very clear terms from his perspective what he wants to do and what he's being stopped from doing and the justification he's being given. On the Attorney General's side, they're going to do the exact same thing. They're going to have, from their perspective, what it is that Durham is proposing to do or was proposing to do, why it was inappropriate in the view of the Attorney General, and why the Attorney General gave him directions to not take that step and instead chose to send the investigation in another direction. If you use this hypothetical example to not initiate a criminal prosecution.
The conspiracy part, to not initiate conspiracy charges,
correct.
Specifically the conspiracy part. Yeah.
Well, I don't know that it would have been. I was thinking more in terms of individuals. In other words, Garland would say, "Look, I'm not going to authorize you to criminally proceed against Peter Strzok. He's been referred to the Inspections Division and the Office of Professional Responsibility, OPR, in the Department of Justice, who typically handle agent misconduct investigations and prosecutions. That's where it normally happens. That's where it's going to happen now. It's not going to be a special counsel proceeding." So, he could, or Auten, Auten's under review. Merit Service Protection Board. That's what I was trying to think of last night, and I couldn't remember. So it's all going to be in writing. It's all going to be, lawyered. The language is going to be tortured and lawyered to the nth degree, because eventually it's all supposed to end up with Congress. In the report. The report is supposed to include not just what the report is supposed to include what the special counsel did, if the special counsel was stopped from doing anything, what he was stopped from doing, and an explanation by the Attorney General why he was stopped. Now, if you look back to Mueller, one of the aspects of the Mueller report was the special counsel said he wasn't stopped from doing anything by either Rosen, who was what the hell, Rod Rosenstein, or Barr after him. Mueller said they didn't tell me I couldn't do anything. I was able to do everything I wanted to do.
So okay, so then it would be in the report, and it would be if Durham was stopped by Garland for some specific reason, then it would be in the report.
It's according to the regulation that is supposed to be in the report. Yes, and then the Attorney General's explanation for his decision is supposed to be in the report.
Okay. That being said, then if it even is, if he even has been, because I question that, like that doesn't quite make sense that he wouldn't have at this point mentioned it to the public in some way to gain support or defense behind the scenes, like had been mentioned earlier. So that being said, there is no way if that had happened there is no way he resigns and lets his staff write the report. If he has been blocked by Garland, okay, we were talking about the guy pounding a monster yesterday and coming back with fucking fire in his eyes, and now we're talking about him resigning next week. That's
well, hold
crazy.
on, but let's keep something in mind though. DeFilippis.
You don't want to know what he did tonight.
DeFilippis withdrew from this case, right? DeFilippis was making appearances in the Danchenko case, and then several weeks ago, he filed a notice of withdrawal. All right? DeFilippis might be off writing the report. That report might be done a week after the Danchenko verdict, for all we know. You know, the Mueller report only took 3 months.
And if he was stopped, and what you're saying is true, then we'll know that within the next week or two.
Exactly.
DeFilippis went private.
Do you think we'll know that before the election? Like, what more, quote, election interference could come out?
Well, here's another interesting factoid that we got to keep in mind. When Barr appointed him, part of Barr's instructions were that Durham produce a report to the Attorney General in a form and with content that could be released in its entirety to the public. So the instruction at the very outset was, write your report in such a way that it can be released without having to be 50% redacted.
Couldn't Garland just edit that?
Yeah, and then he's going to have to explain why he did.
Or not.
Garland doesn't even have to release the report that Durham generates is specifically for Garland.
He might fart in his face or something.
So they impeach him, which they won't, or he won't be convicted. So, I mean, we've gotten to a point where there's just no consequences. It's a political problem. There's no question. You should win the elections. I think that's the question here.
Thanks, Ship. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Hey, so Devin Nunes told Hannity that Durham is being blocked from bringing charges against Comey and McCabe and other people. And he was pretty, I saw some tweets about it. I wanted to go and check what exactly he said. And he was pretty emphatic about it. I don't know what he knows, but that's the case, that's a big problem. Unfortunately, Hannity, as he always does, then sort of trampled all over Devin just as he was sort of starting to explain. But he did get in what he got in, and that is that Garland is blocking Durham from bringing those charges. So, what Ship said sounds eminently kind of reasonable and sensible, that these things will then come out under the regulations, and that would be great. Personally, I prefer Durham to just resign and just have a press conference and get it all out. But there does seem to be something afoot here.
Well, yeah, if he's not allowed to even bring charges against Jaffe, there's no way he's gonna be allowed to bring charges against Comey and those dudes, because Jaffe looked dead to rights compared to them. But
depending on what his background is and what skeletons he could bring to light.
Yeah, that's true. But like you're saying, if it could just be dependent on this last trial. Durham doesn't want to resign in the midst of his own trial. So we'll see what happens next week. I don't know. Has that ever happened when a trial lawyer just resigns in the midst of his own trial, basically? I don't know if that happens, but
the trial's going to be over on Monday, so you can have a verdict on Monday.
Yeah, but it would be sort of ridiculous for Durham to resign 2 days ago or whatever.
With the
Danchenko trial coming up, blah blah blah. Especially with the people he has around him, he doesn't want to fuck over Keelty and Arsenal and Britton Shaw and all these other people. Maybe, I don't know, but it doesn't seem likely.
Something else, the differences between this trial and the Sussman trial basically all seem to revolve around Durham choosing to take it up himself and DeFilippis being gone. Is there possibly something going on there that DeFilippis was asked to leave because he wasn't it wasn't aggressive enough and Durham wasn't happy with it?
No. I don't think so.
All right.
The biggest difference I see between these two trials is in the Sussman case, the Durham team essentially left it to the defense to prove that the FBI was corrupt. And it didn't matter what the hell Sussman said. And they knew he was with the DNC anyway. In this case, Durham actively took after the FBI. He took the place of the defense in the Sussman case here, and basically ripped them up. And that was on purpose, clearly by design. He was ready for it, and he had it planned. He had his cross and redirect planned, and he just like a rocket, guided rocket. He just tore into the FBI.
Hey, think about.
Hey, Ship, I think I accidentally cut you off there.
Who's Durham's key witness in the Sussman case? Is Baker, a quasi-hostile witness. And then they have that email. They have that email appear late that kind of builds in a ambiguity. And then his key witness here in Danchenko is the agent Danchenko supposedly lied to. And he's a defense witness for all intents and purposes at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Those are hard cases to win when your key witnesses are in effect lined up against you.
They are really hard, almost impossible, but they took a different tact in this one. In the Sussman case, they laid off their key witness. They didn't rip Baker to shreds.
And that's why
in this case they did.
Yeah, that's why I am suspicious that something has happened between these two trials in terms of him being shut down. And it's like, well, okay, then we're going to go out in a blaze of glory and we're not going to spare the FBI or the special counsel's office. I don't know if you were able to listen last night, but Fool and MB were able to describe how every reference to the special counsel's office was just like dripping with disdain.
Oh yeah, and especially, today even more.
So I read somewhere. I'm gonna have to. I didn't get to listen to your recap at the very beginning, and most of the last 8 hours have been working on finishing an appellate brief that was due today in the DC circuit. So I didn't even see most of the Twitter stuff about what happened. What was the reference? How did it come up? How did it come up? The reference to the special counsel office phones being wiped.
That happened?
Oh, I saw something on Twitter. I thought somehow it came out in somebody's testimony. One of the analysts or somebody talked about it.
Probably had something to do with the authorization of Danchenko's phones being wiped.
Right. Yeah. Danchenko was instructed to wipe his phone by Allison.
Yeah. I did get a readout. To revisit, but unless people aren't interested, to revisit our discussion last night on Helson and his status. I didn't get a readout from somebody that knew Helson. I just got a readout from a longtime FBI agent. I kind of described the circumstances, and the person was laughing. I said, every officer got those guys. The guys who late in their career get their hands on like a once-in-a-lifetime source, and then they just milk it because they don't have to do anything else.
That's what it seemed like. That was exactly it.
And it's like the career ender. It's like, this is what I'm going to do until the day I'm eligible to retire, and then I'm filing my paperwork. And with this guy, I can sit here every day and just write IRRs. I can sit at my computer every day and write IRRs and not do anything else.
It's like, this is my umbilical cord. I'm never going to part ways with it. And then finally, it was just struck down.
And it's the only thing that ever made his career special.
Yeah, and the idea that somehow is an indicator of significance about what Danchenko is doing is laughable. That's just some guy trying to make himself sound important, and there's not really a way to, check for accuracy what he's testifying to.
No, but the worst part of that is it's the whole department has expanded that. And if the testimony is to be believed, it's not just him that believed it, that expanded into this entire
intelligence network.
No, but my point is that's what he says.
Right.
That's not necessarily what everybody else thinks.
That's true, but even if it's a little bit true, I mean, it's a huge problem. I mean, even if whatever Danchenko, everything he said, every ounce is poison in my mind that it has to be vetted and checked out by some sort of third party or some independent party that's going to come in with a clear mind and look at everything he touched, because anything we know that it has any truth, that has anything Danchenko touched was just bullshit. So
yeah, when I looked at the transcript this morning, just for briefly, I got a copy of the transcript. I looked at it, and when I shared with this other person the revelation that Helson figured out at some point that maybe as much as 50% of Danchenko's material was open source and they were paying him for it, this person started laughing their ass off. Thought it was the funniest thing he heard, that this agent was so dumb he was letting this source basically chisel him for money for open source information.
Yep.
And he said, I know how he did it. The person said, I know exactly how I did it, because he's trolling Russian language material. So he can read Russian and he can speak Russian, and Helson can't. So he can tell Helson anything.
Yeah.
He said Helson had his own linguist. Normally, he said, the person said, normally if I'm dealing with a foreign language source, I've got to get a linguist to look at all the foreign language material and decipher it for me. He said Helson had his own linguist.
Yeah, the guy that's telling him what it says that you're paying.
So yeah, it was just, that was to this person with 20 plus years in the bureau doing CI just laughed their ass off.
Yeah, but still, like, you can cut that in, like maybe 50% is open source. That's still 12 active investigations that Igor Danchenko was contributing to. He's an absolute saint. I rode an elevator with him multiple times. One of the greatest men in the entire country.
They painted him like he should be on Mount Rushmore. That was they went way too far in my opinion. Shit, what did you think of that? Having read the because to my mind in the trial, that was by far the most exciting point. I think we agree that was incredible that they opened the door to that, and how Durham came back. Was that like especially, did that stand out to you as like, wow, that doesn't happen every day?
Well, I thought that was what happened, because you guys couldn't hear the sidebar, right?
No.
The sidebar is actually in the transcript. The sidebar, the white noise in the courtroom is to keep the jury from hearing it. It's not to be like a sealed proceeding. It's just to keep the jury from hearing it. So it's in the transcript. And what happened at sidebar is Durham said, I'm not going to go into the details, Your Honor, of the 2009 episode, but this witness knows certain things about it. And even knowing that, he didn't do what was recommended. And then what Trenga said to him is, are you saying he personally knew this? You're going to ask him about his personal knowledge? And Durham said, yes, the recommendations were personally made to him, and he made the decision to not do what was recommended. And Trenga said, well, okay, but it's his personal knowledge, then it goes to his credibility, and you can ask him about it. But don't go into the details of 2009.
That makes sense, because it did stop at why actually, what was said by whom and whether it was hearsay or not. They didn't approach. They stay away from that.
Right, and I mean, Trenga's got a good reason for not wanting to go into the 2009 details. Danchenko's a criminal defendant. He's only accused of making a false statement to the FBI. If you start telling the FBI, if you start telling the jury that he was suspected in 2009 of being a Russian intelligence asset and trying to acquire classified information, I mean, when it was never established, the evidence was they never made a determination one way or the other. They closed out the case without making a determination. So it could, conceivably, it could all have been false. And so you can't let the jury hear completely unconfirmed, uncorroborated allegations that he was a Russian intelligence asset. That's just, that's over the line. So that's why Trenga said no details, but the existence of the investigation and this witness's knowledge of it, yes, you can ask about that.
But he still came forward and said that that other lady thought he was a GRU agent, which is nice.
Yeah, they get a bunch in, like a bunch based on that.
All right, guys. I don't know if any of you have any other quick comments or anything else you thought of. I might wrap this one up. I know we did like 3 hours yesterday, so I'm getting close to calling it a night.
We might be here for a bit, but
Hey, did you guys go to that restaurant I told you to go to?
No, we went to a place called
we went to Murphy's.
You guys missed out. If you're not leaving, you should go.
Murphy sounded pretty good.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Anybody?
I guess I have a quick question, though. It's kind of a fun one. Considering all the people that were there, in the gallery and the reporters and everything, were there any, other than the interactions with Danchenko in the elevator, were there any big moments of like sleuth corner recognition and funny things like that?
Yes.
No comment.
I know you mentioned Jerry Dunleavy, but I was wondering if there's anything else that you can talk about.
Oh yeah, we hung out with Jerry for a bit. Shot the shit with Adam Goldman for a bit. Ivan Reichland, Tori.
Please tell me that Adam Goldman is not a nice guy in person.
Oh, he is not.
It depends on the guy, I guess.
Right.
Some other idea, Regina. Anybody else?
Hey.
Oh, Richard Painter was just freaking wobbling around the entire time, like Diogenes with a freaking lantern in daylight. Like he was completely out of his mind. Like I have no idea what. Like me and MB sat in the courtroom, and I'm like, what is up with this dude? He's just freaking staring at us.
Oh yeah.
And like I'm like in my back of my mind, I'm like that looks like Richard Painter. And then like we're with Jerry, like finally at the like, who is that dude? And he's like, that's Richard Painter. I'm like, that's fucking Richard Painter. I'm like, why is he even here?
Yeah.
What's he doing?
Yeah, no one knew I was there. And he's just like, that dude's out of his mind.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, this dude's just freaking crazy. I'm like, yeah. Like, what is going on there? That was pretty funny. Who else?
So I just have one comment real quick I want to make. If I came across as very negative before, I apologize. One of the things I wanted to thank Ship for was his clarification on the special counsel regulations and the law. And I guess there was some confusion on my part about independent versus special counsel, and I think that's a confusion that a lot of people have. I looked into it while we were talking, and one of the things that really stood out to me about the changes to the independent/special counsel law is that it was sort of tailored to give the AG an awful lot of discretion over the council. And this is probably, I gather, in response to Ken Starr in his investigation. And as far as I understand about the new special counsel law, it was basically a Democrat Congress rewrote that law. And what I want to point out, and I think this is the source of my personal frustration when I see these things, is that the discretion given to the AG is used very differently by Barr versus Garland. And all this talk we have about how Barr or Garland may be stopping Durham, et cetera, and so forth, is somewhat explained in the way Shipp described the language of the regulation around the statute of the special counsel law. Barr chose to give Mueller a lot of free rein, and he chose to allow Mueller to put the report on Amazon even before it was out, which he didn't have to do. Whereas Garland, he has complete discretion to squash. I'm sorry. Did someone say something? I didn't mean to ramble.
You said on Amazon? You said on Amazon?
Yeah, no, I saw the Mueller report on Amazon days before the Mueller report came out.
No one's actually. I mean, that was like one of the people put their.
No, I understand. My point being, it was well known in advance that Barr was going to let that publication be completely public, and that was his decision, kind of a priori.
But then you can't compare it to a report that doesn't actually exist right now, or it might not even be
I understand,
written.
but look at this from the point of view of the public, right? And this is the sort of the dilemma we have that I'm trying to fathom out. Is that we have this sort of duality between the politics of the thing and the legality of the thing, right? We're looking at everything happening in the Trump-Russia collusion, blah, blah, blah. And we're looking at everything, and then to compare this to the whole, everything going on with the Bidens. And the disparity here is like night and day. The contrast is in bold relief. And what I struggle with is exactly this point. And I think when Shipp described the regulations around the special counsel law, which was all written to sort of make something like what Ken Starr was trying to do impossible. It's sort of like we can't win a war like this. This is asymmetrical. When you have a valid case against someone like within the government that did something, the government can put up all these barriers and obstacles based on evidence and this and that. But when they really want to go after somebody, all that can be circumvented somehow and have the effect of, kind of poisoning the well of the jury pool or whatever you want to call that. And this is what I'm trying to articulate, and I apologize because this is my first time trying to participate in this discussion. But I see this so clearly in my head. And I look at how Barr gave a lot of deference to Mueller, basically gave him free rein. Mueller got away with saying stuff like, Steele's not in my purview, which is absolute bullshit. And yet Durham can't even get to the heart of the matter with Danchenko or Dolan or any of this. And when you kind of look at it from that perspective, you have to ask yourself, why is it so hard to prove what's true and so easy to perpetuate lies that are plainly not true? This is a big problem for our system right now, and
it's consequences of a completely corrupt and biased media.
Yes, that's right.
People don't know what's happening. You can tell them whatever you want to tell them, and they'll believe it.
And this is why, in my darker moments, I kind of despair over the point. But if we could just center around some piece of reality, you talk about proving a case, you got motive, opportunity, etc. None of that even seems like part of the discussion anymore. It's so easy when you frame things in sort of that way, and yet we can't talk about it that way. On our side, we're we can't prove Danchenko really thought this XYZ, WhatsApp, blah blah blah. These are such nonsense issues compared to the bigger picture, and this is where we're losing. On some level, we're losing really badly, and we have to rethink our strategy. And I agree, within the context of the court of law, you have to kind of obey the forms and the substance of that. But we aren't fighting the battle anywhere else, and that's why we're losing. On some level, we can't communicate a simple thing like actually the entire Russiagate was complete bullshit from the Clinton campaign. That is not in our popular culture. Most people don't think that because of the media, because of this.
Never happened either because like of how the media works. But like at the same time, like we've been talking about, like the only way we're going to get rid of this political prosecution federal stuff is like through Congress, and we downsize the federal bureaucracy and get rid of a bunch of fucking federal laws, which you should do.
I'm 100% on board with that. Like you can't even begin to describe how badly I would like to get there. But the problem I see is because of the stranglehold of the media, vast majority of people, and I dare say even a large number of Republicans, like they can't get to a place where they see that corruption and want to like really put the kibosh on it. Maybe we'll get there after this election, but I'm somewhat dubious because even if we win, you're going to have McCarthy, you're going to have McConnell, and it's the same crowd. And then you're going to have all these same people, the Fiona Hills and the whatever. These people just never go away.
When the FBI and the Department of Justice has been completely politically weaponized, what's happening? Exactly. What I see happening right now, though, is that we're trying to fight that legally, and you're never going to win that battle legally when they end media. You have to fight it politically.
100%.
And the only way to take it down is through political means. That means throwing everything that they're doing to us back at them.
Right. And so the first person,
and I look at Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell, and all I hear is silence.
Forget about it.
Every single day, they should be out there in front of microphones pounding this stuff, and they're not.
You know why they don't? Because the one person who did, Donald Trump, that guy is going to get indicted, and it's going to be a ham sandwich indictment.
The reason
it's going to be a DC jury, and it's going to be like I know people in my family, and this is what kind of makes me despair a bit. I know people in my family that like hear all this stuff. They're like watching the news at night, and they're hearing all this stuff on the J6 committee, and it's just the repetition, the constant bombardment, the whatever. Like if I even bring up the name Trump, it's like, oh my God, that's a deal killer.
Too many Republicans
it's like
are still
unbelievable
afraid.
To me.
Yeah, too many Republicans are still afraid of what the New York Times is going to write about them tomorrow.
Yeah,
and they just don't get it that it doesn't matter anymore.
Is there
100%?
I heard someone mention, we need something like a church committee. Is that something that this is how we could play it out or handle it politically? To kind of tilt towards that direction, and that Congress has these committees very formal, like a church committee, and therefore the media doesn't have any other choice. I mean, they can choose not to televise it, but it would allow at least hearings and testimony that's out there for the public to hear. I don't know if anybody's even considered that.
So my only thought in response to that, and I have a thought, and it's like kind of formulating, but the point, the thing about the media that has been kind of impressed upon me after the last 5 or 6 years of watching how everything's kind of like rolled out, is that you have to the messaging component of it has become extraordinarily controllable because of technology. Like we don't really appreciate the impact of that. I'm a software architect and engineer by trade, and my love of political philosophy goes back to my college days. But I follow this stuff, and one of the things we haven't really grappled with is media. We're talking on Twitter. We're using this platform. This platform could deplatform all of us tomorrow.
Yeah,
we don't really have a means, kind of point to point, to communicate without a central authority. And what's happened is, ironically, in the age of the internet, when everything was supposed to be sort of point to point and free and not centralized, everything's become hyper centralized.
Yeah.
Everything we're saying right now, I guarantee you, the NSA is collecting. They know our names. They know our voices. They can like plug into our bank accounts. Like all this is like not even controversial anymore. And the thing that's really hard for us to deal with is the fact that those levers of power on a technological level are outside of our control, or they at least really seem to be, because no matter how many intelligent conversations we have about these subjects, these kinds of conversations never make it to the media. The average person sees when they turn on the news, or they read their Wall Street Journal or their Washington Post. Like, on some level, the things of real meaning never make it into the minds of people who now have instant connection to that.
Yeah.
Like, and that's sort of the dilemma I'm trying to, like, as a person, think about. How can, because I have a lot of knowledge about technology and software and et cetera, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, how did that happen? And it's actually all the way down to the protocol level of how computers talk to each other through TCP/IP. Like, there's something really broken there, and we lost something really important when we gave that sort of power over the internet away. Like, I can't remember, there was something Obama did in, like, I don't know, 20 something, 15, 14. And now all of a sudden our news is monochromic. It comes across, no matter what channel you turn on, is the same.
Yeah.
And it's a repetition, and it's just constant bombardment of buzzwords. And that's
Yeah.
what, like, most people hear. And here we are in our little corner of Twitter trying to have, like, intelligent conversations, hashing out, distinctions in law and evidence and this and that. And we find ourselves utterly ineffectual. And that's what's got me a little bit sad. And I'm sorry if before I came across the wrong way. I want to solve that problem, because we can't deal with these these aren't even nuances anymore. We can't even get to the blunt facts of the matter, the obvious motivations of people in power. We can't get to any of that if we can allow if it's impossible to penetrate this sort of weird centralized veil that somehow has overcome the internet.
Yeah,
And
it's the bullhorn. Who's
that's
got
the
the
issue.
bullhorn, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have control of the bullhorn. I mean, we're being censored. We're being, fact checked. Whatever you want to call
Right.
it. We've kind of lost our ability to have that forum, that public forum that we've used, the social media for, or even the internet blogs.
Like, the whole reason I use this alias is, and I have a very good career with high paying income. I will lose it in a minute if my name is associated with an opinion not sort of in the mainstream. And I've been told that point blank. Now you can say, "Oh, you're a coward, you're this, that." No, I got a family, I got, like, bills to pay, this is the point. This is how it happens. Now, I'm at a point of where I'm almost, like, really not able even anymore to contain that. This is the problem. They have found a way through our laws and through our system to circumvent it by its own means. So they use the First Amendment to kill the First Amendment, right? They use our freedoms to stifle our freedoms. They hide behind corporate veils. They hide behind this concept of community standards and blah, blah, blah. They hide behind these idea of fact checks. And all of this is completely and utterly nonsense. And yet they can do it. And because they can do it, it has that effect. And downstream, the younger generation, they're like, I look at my own children. I'm like 51. My kids are in college or in their 20s. And they, while sensitive to some of my points of view, because I'm kind of, open about it, they yet are part of the culture. And that culture, we've lost it. I feel like we've lost the cultural war on some level. We have to re-engage that somehow in an intelligent way. And we've lost the technological war. We can't do anything but talk in our own echo chambers now. And that's a real problem.
Yeah, I agree.
And meanwhile, the special counsel law, which is what really was my big epiphany today, listening to Ship's explanation of it, which was excellent, is it's entirely geared to give whoever's AG complete discretion, really, over what the special counsel can say or do in public. And you have two models here. You got Barr versus Garland, and they're night and day.
Yeah.
Garland gave Mueller free rein. Rosenstein gave Mueller free rein. Garland has obviously got Durham on a leash. And the law lets them do it. The interpretation of their own regulations let them do it. This is all legit. And there's nothing you can do about it until you somehow, in a world of absolute dominance of one particular point of view in the media, somehow you're supposed to win an election to change that.
Hey guys, I think I'm going to jump in here. sorry to be abrupt, but
No, that's okay. I didn't mean to ramble.
No, and it's good. It's great to have you on. I hope that you'll join us in future chats, and we get to hear more from you. I think you had a lot of really good thoughts tonight, and a good perspective, and very articulate.
And I apologize.
It's just getting late.
I was getting kind of dark there.
No, you were great. But I think I'm going to cut it off here. It's pretty late. It's about 1 a.m. So I'm going to probably end the chat here, and we'll try to do more of these. Certainly on Monday, we'll have another chat as Durham finishes or whatever happens. Of course, we'll be covering that. Had a lot of great speakers tonight. It's just so great to have MB and Fool Nelson sitting there in the trial, and then to come here and give the play-by-play. Saves us a lot of time having to look at the transcripts, and we get a lot of detail that the transcripts just aren't going to have. So
we just made it.
Yeah. What's that?
Yeah, we just made it all up.
There was no trouble.
Yeah,
perfect.
The trial,
was a good story,
ended like on Tuesday. So
well, it was entertaining what you came up with. So
yeah, we just waxed poetic the rest of the time.
Well, perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna end it here. Thank you guys again. Thank you to all our speakers. They're all great tonight. I'll plan on doing one of these on Monday, and I will see you guys later. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, guys.
If we died in Georgetown, it was not a murder. It was an assassination.
Yeah, we're definitely not suicidal at all. We had a great weekend.
Okay, Jesse Smollett.
Whoa! Yeah, we're also going out for Subway in the next couple hours, so just let you know.
Yeah, be careful. Don't go out to go to Subway or anything.
Yeah.
All right, see you guys.
All right, see you, boys.